story's concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed at the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, cripes, get hell," before driving off. And so I just said it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, Great Britain. How are you? It's me, Jonathan Gullis, sitting in on Weekend Breakfast for the amazing Alex Phillips, and I'm delighted to be joining you on the airwaves on what is a action-packed show for you today, with a whole host of stories that we will be going through. We've had the breaking news overnight that Reform UK, led by Nigel Farage, has announced finally their plan for mass deportations. Kemi Badenoch has been saying that flying the flag is something that we should be proud and patriotic about. We've seen that exclusive interview with the Telegraph's Alison Pearson with Lucy Connolly. She's declaring herself a political prisoner. Do you agree? And of course, looking at those of you who will be joining protests up and down the country regarding migrant hotels after the government announced that it will legally challenge the decision of the High Court to close down the Bell Hotel in Epping. What a show we have for you today, and I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by a friend of us here on Talk, especially Weekend Breakfast, who I was only with a few hours ago, so I think we're both sort of sleep deprived, but we're both here anyway. His name is Steve Enell, and he is a broadcaster and a comedian. How are you, Steve?
I'm very well. Normally we hide our private life, that we don't talk about what we get up to of an evening, but it's, you've outed me, all right?
I know.
To see you again.
Yes. I can assure everyone we did sleep in different places. If our wives are questioning what was going on, but indeed, look, let's get into the first story of the day, and that is, of course, the big exclusive on the Times. I'll get it up here for people. The Times is reporting an exclusive interview with Nigel Farage where he says his pledge will to 5 deportation flights a day. For listeners and viewers, let me take you through what Nigel Farage is saying. If an illegal migrant arrives on the shores of this country, having come via small boat or indeed other illegal and irregular routes, then they will be arrested, which is detention, and detained immediately. He's going to use disused military bases and estimates that he will create 24,000 bed spaces for those arrests to take place and people to be put in. Deportations will happen to places like Afghanistan and Eritrea, where he's willing to do deals, or other safe third countries. I think that's a reheating of the Rwanda deal. Or if that doesn't work, there'll be a backstop of using the Ascension Islands, which is a UK overseas territory. There's going to be a new criminal offence if you're deported and try to come back, as well as if you've deliberately destroyed your ID documents. He wants to leave the ECHR. He wants to scrap the Human Rights Act. He wants to derogate from the Refugee Convention, UN Convention Against Torture, and the Council of Europe's Anti-Trafficking Convention, and declaring it a state of emergency. He's pledging 5 deportation flights a day, and he will introduce a British Bill of Rights, as well as allow illegal migrants in the first 6 months to voluntarily return themselves by going on an app, signing up, and they get £2,500 into their pocket plus a free flight. That is there's a lot to go in there. First of all, Steve, what do you make of what Nigel Farage announced?
Good that he did it, because we needed some meat on the bone. We needed some detail. It's very easy to be opposition, which kind of, at least in the media, that's what Reform UK is in terms of who gets the coverage. It's them, but it's nice to get some coverage with detail rather than just some. I'm not being harsh when I say publicity stunt. The summer is about just getting noticed as politicians rather than detail. So it's nice that we've actually got some detail to talk about, some of which you can argue about and get some discussion going, which is great. The idea of arresting someone or detaining them if they enter the country doing an illegal thing shouldn't really be that controversial. You could frame it very easily to say, look, you're still getting your claim processed, but if you've entered illegally, then of course it's right that you should be detained somewhere. It's kind of what's happening roughly anyway. It's just changing where and the restrictions. The idea of 5 flights seems a little bit,
fanciful, I think is the word I'd use.
It's fanciful. It's also just about the signage, the virtue signalling, because actually I'd rather hear of 5 courts a day that he could have access to lined up for what's obviously going to happen. There won't be as many flights as there are court cases. So you can get the airports all lined up as much as you want, get some of these courts actually processing it, because it's just going to be a massive array of legal challenges. On loads of these, I mean, unless he gets the deals in, he talks about deals with Afghanistan and Eritrea. If you get the deal, good. Even if you do get the deal, there's probably still going to be legal. The biggest battle about this is going to be that next step. You can get all these plans in place, but whether you can actually follow through on it because of all the legal challenges, even if you get out of all these agreements, it'll still end up going through the courts.
Well, I think this is the key thing, isn't it? So I think it's on Tuesday we're expecting to actually see the draft, essentially, of this illegal migration mass deportations bill that's being talked about. And look, I think one thing that Reform have been interestingly doing is almost looking a bit at what Michael Gove did when the Conservatives were in opposition all the way back in 2005, 2010. Have bills drafted in advance, helped by lawyers, so that when you go into the Home Office, you can put on the desk with your civil servants, here is the bill. Yeah. Now, let's go and seek the civil service advice. Now, I'm sure we can all guess what the civil service and what the civil service lawyers are going to say. I think the problem is that people forget, and particularly politicians, when you get advice from civil servants, and indeed lawyers who work for the civil service, it is advice. The idea is that they're trying to always be risk averse. They're trying to tell you that you might face legal challenges and hurdles here, there and everywhere. But ministers can still choose to go, I'm going to plough on ahead and we will be prepared for those challenges. Or they can take the advice, which normally means you end up with a very watered down. I think the big threat for Reform is if they walk in to government and if they end up going into it and asking the civil service to help them write such legislation, it's never going to match what they're trying to talk about in advance.
Yeah, and if they do any watering down, it needs to be, from their point of view, after an election, I suppose, when the actual rubber hits the ground and practicality kicks in. What's that thing about no plan survives the first contact? Yeah, there's that. I suppose their job at the moment, in terms of their level of opposition, just needs to be about sending out the right messages, doesn't it? So actually, even if the advice comes and then you don't listen to it, you'll send out a better, stronger message by saying, no, we believe this to be the most important thing to focus on. Yeah.
Do you think that, again, they're saying it will cost £10 billion over the scheme, essentially, yeah. I think over 4 years. People might raise an eyebrow. They're saying that they'll save £7 billion by not using hotels. They're very confident that if such a scheme came into place, straight away you would see boat numbers collapse, which they would then say is how you make the saving. Is there risk here that, like Keir Starmer when he said he would smash the gangs and bring numbers down, like when Rishi Sunak said he would stop the boats, and indeed, obviously, all we saw is boat numbers go up, isn't there a risk here of Nigel Farage raising expectations, and if he does get in and doesn't deliver, that he's, as he himself has said, will leave himself open to God knows who on the right to potentially come in and push some pretty, I would suspect, very unstomachable kind of views?
Possibly. I don't think it'll come down to the numbers. I think that you're saying 10 billion across 4 years and 7 billion should be the saving each year. So 2 years in, you should be sorted. But that presumes that 7 billion goes down to a zero. Obviously, it won't. It'll get reduced. But, at some point, you can see you'll make your money back. I don't think it matters if he doesn't. I don't think this is a money story. I mean, the journalists, well, if they find the number and put it on there, if you said to so many people, went out and did a survey, look, we'll be paying a little bit more, but we'll fix some of the other issues in terms of usage of infrastructure and the rate of change and the things that are upsetting people, or at least being a genuine concern, I think people would willingly pay for it, because we seem to willingly pay for their systems at the moment. It turns out we're paying $7 billion a year. You could probably say, we'll make that a bit more, and when you get this problem fixed, people will go for it.
Now, look, this is a bold and very radical idea, something that I think is needed. I think the system that we operate in is in dire need of a shock, and I think Nigel Farage is tapping into that. I think Reform probably have the most leeway of any other political party when it comes to doing very bold, radical stuff that the voters are willing to take a gamble on. But do you think somehow the Conservatives have come out and said that this is a reheated version of things that they've already announced? They cite their deportation bill, which would automatically deport illegal migrants. In fact, they were tweeting yesterday, illegal migrants, deport them. They want to kick out all foreign national offenders. They want to double the residency requirements from 5 to 10 years for indefinite leave to remain. They want a legally binding cap on annual migration. They want to disapply parts of the Human Rights Act for all migration cases, not scrap it like Reform is saying, disapply certain parts. Bring in scientific age testing. I mean, do the Conservative Party have a point? Are they being more realistic about their plans?
Sadly for them, yeah. That list that you just read out there, and compare that to the clip of you reading out the list of the Reform UK one, it's less thrilling, isn't it? It might be more practical, easier to implement, but it just doesn't have that headline grabbing. And this is what the Conservatives are just not doing particularly well, understanding that you might need to grab a headline every so often. They may like there's one guy who'll climb a lamppost to put a flag up that gets a lot of headlines, has a fight in Stratford Tube Station. And let's be honest, it's difficult not to have a fight in Stratford Tube Station when you go there. But in terms of, it seems cheap to call it like a PR thing, but that's what politics is as well, especially through the summer. And I feel sorry for the Conservatives because they're up against someone who's really good at getting the story into the papers. There are so many stories that have been nothing to do with Reform, and Reform get themselves involved by saying, oh, we'll use parliamentary privilege to say something or whatever. Next thing you know, the newspapers are writing the story from the point of view of what are Reform doing about this thing that's nothing to do with them. They're playing the game press-wise, which you've got to do when you're at this level of opposition. I think, I'll throw this one out. Here's another option, right? You know, the reason why oppositions don't come up with this much detail early on is in case the government nick the plan. And it's not impossible. It seems like the stupidest thing I've ever said, which is, you know, a high bar. But Labour could listen to this and think, well, wait a minute, half of these things we're kind of almost doing. You know, we're already trying to refurb the military base near Braintree to make it like one big site that it'll upset some locals, but not everyone else who's near a hotel. So already they're having this, you know, certain areas, instead of using hotels, use reform bases. Some of the other ideas of deporting people, you know, the deportations have apparently increased.
I think around 35,000 deportations in Labour's first year, albeit I think around 7,000 of those are actually enforced, the rest are voluntary.
Yeah. And the old voluntary scheme as well, which was like the Rwanda 2 plan, which was £3,000. I love the fact that Nigel Farage has come under 2,500. You know, there's a bargaining thing that's happening there. But you know what? Yes, some of the implementable bits of the Reform UK plan could be nicked by Labour.
Do you know what, though? I don't disagree with you, Stephen. Genuinely, the fact we've got Graham Stringer, first Labour MP, to actually come out and publicly say we should leave the ECHR, that is a big first step. We've got rumoured that Labour MPs, albeit anonymously, are saying that it's time to have a Rwanda plan. The irony of that, I don't think, will be lost on anyone in the great British public.
They need to pick a different place. So they can't keep saying Rwanda. Rename the country.
Rename the country or find a different one, indeed. Then you've got, obviously, MPs like Mike Tappin, Dover and Deal, for example, doing videos promoting what Labour is doing, but also saying that this is a national emergency that we need to be dealt with. I mean, it is quite extraordinary, and I think you're right. Keir Starmer, a lot of the attacks on him is that he doesn't have any real founding ideology or beliefs. But with that comes flexibility.
Yeah, true. And if they have the sense to listen, I always say this when it comes to populism, right? It's thrown around as an insult. But
I always find it weird to attack a politician for wanting to be popular. I always find that an odd thing.
It's two sections. The first section is listening to the genuine concerns of people, and then the populism bit is selling snake oil as an answer to solve it. Well, if you ignore that first bit shouldn't be thrown away. That's the thing that you should pay attention to. And then if you're a responsible politician, you come up with a proper solution to it. So don't ignore. I mean, the fact that so many people are planning to take to the streets in protest, I mean, Keir Starmer must have learnt that maybe you should pay attention to the complaints that cause protests rather than just trying to clamp down on people who might or may not tweet about it.
Well, then, coming in, we've got, obviously, in the Sun about migrant hotel protests, as you rightly say. I think there's 27 protests expected across the country outside accommodation, hotel. We know that on the 22nd of August, the High Court injunction ordered the Bell Hotel in Epping to end housing illegal migrants. This is due to a planning breach, as the owner did not have proper planning permission to accommodate the asylum hotel. So it is, I'm sorry to say, ladies and gents, quite a technical part of law. And I'm told by people in local government that if the owner simply applies for a change of use, that would be enough to override the High Court injunction, because you'll be able to say you're currently going through the council to seek a change of use. So let's see what happens there. But however, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, who is currently apparently interrailing across Europe as if she's on her gap year, has said that the Home Office is going to appeal the decision. Closures must be executed, and I quote, in a managed and orderly way. And Labour has pledged to end the use of migrant hotels by 2029, although despite the rhetoric of we're closing the hotels, we've halved the hotels, of which many people have said actually that's the Conservative legacy, the hotels down from 400 to 200. The statistics we had this week showed that hotel use under Labour is actually up by 8%. I mean, if, to be fair to the government, if not hotels, then where?
Oh, this is the thing. I mean, closing down the hotels is simply moving the problem further away from the protests, which doesn't solve the underlying problem, but it just gets rid of maybe the impetus for things to really kick off this summer, which we don't want to happen. Statistics, because I guess you've got fewer hotels being used, but more people in them, which is just more people per room, or the odd lobby's probably got people sleeping in it now. But it's a slight way of going, oh yeah, fewer hotels being used. Yeah, but you're absolutely packing them to the gunnels, which is probably part of the problem. Do you not think, when it comes to this case, it's a bit like getting Al Capone on tax, isn't it? Using planning permission to be the reason to shut down. No one is protested near the Bell Hotel going, do you know what? I don't mind what's happening to the area, but it's the not sticking to the planning rules. That's the one that's bothered me. That's not anyone's problem. And yeah, maybe, they could they could apply for the change of use. What bothers me is the verdict of the judge, the result of the judge, was saying it's the impact on the local area of the protest that brought about the injunction. And we're saying it's not the legal side of the protest, because everyone has a responsibility to put up with legal protest. It's the illegal part of the protest that's impacted the area, therefore injunction. Well, you've just incentivised breaking the law when on a protest. They've kind of tacitly sent the message out, if you want there to be change, you can't just do a legal protest. That's the dodgiest message that's come out of this story, out of all of it.
Which I think you say is correct. And I think one thing I will say to listeners and viewers is, number one, if you want to go and express your anger at the situation, by all means, you have every right to take the streets. I would be standing in solidarity with you. However, violence should never, ever be the solution, nor should any form of overtly aggressive intimidation of residents in those hotels. Whilst I understand there are some people in the Bell Hotel in Epping who have been at this moment charged, albeit they've said that they're innocent of any accusations, for very serious offences where they'll face court trials in the future. Whilst it's clear that the overwhelming majority of people coming across on small boats are young fighting age men, indeed some of them will have very medieval attitudes towards women and children, and therefore we have to be alert and concerned. It will undermine the cause and undermine the issue if violence does indeed break out. So I hold everyone to make your voice heard, show your power by turning up and saying enough is enough. But remember, your conduct will determine how the story is reported, how it's perceived by the public, and indeed whether or not you will get that kind of support going forward. I mean, it doesn't help the government this week that at the same time we've seen that we are, I think, record-breaking again for this government of smashing records, not smashing gangs. 111,000 asylum claims, up 14% on 2024. Out of the 43,000 illegal entrants into this country, 88% of them are via small boats alone. That's up 38% on the previous year. I mean, it's not a good look, is it? Yvette Cooper is out and about. Keir Starmer called an emergency cabinet meeting to discuss recognising the state of Palestine, but has not declared a national emergency when it comes to small boat crossings and indeed, obviously, what's happening in hotels. It just looks like the government is tone deaf at a time when, as you say, Nigel Farage has been sort of on an active campaign deliberately during recess where most politicians hunker down and have a bit of time off. He's gone, well, if we're going to be the only game in town, then we might as well grab the headlines. Yeah, and all you need to do if you're Starmer is look like you're listening. Literally, I think they could get away with listening and failing to follow through. But if you have that first perception of, well, at least they're listening to my concerns. What's his name? Rory Stewart, the guy who's got marketing and all that. He'll always say, I've seen loads of videos where it's like, if you're complaining to a place, if you think they're listening to your complaint, it doesn't matter if anything happens. I'm sure we've seen some videos on that. And I think you can expand that to politics. If we thought Keir Starmer was actually listening to the complaints of the people, and then, I can't do it because of insert excuse, black hole, red tape, lawyers, doesn't matter. If you look like you're listening, you get away with it. What you need to do is reframe the argument a little. I think you can make a case, even for people who think we have such a duty in terms of dealing with refugees, that you can look at numbers.
And when the laws and the rules were originally set up, things were different, because the idea of one of the things that we pay attention to is freedom to religious
expression,
right? Which means you don't get that in China. We know this because of Uyghur Muslims, right? That means everyone in China technically could successfully apply to be a refugee, which is 1 billion people. So there you go. Look, already you know the maths can't work unless we have the ability, infrastructure-wise, to house 1 billion people. I've not run the maths, but I don't think we do.
No, indeed. And I think that it's going to be an issue that continues to rumble on for the government. And if they don't get on top of this, some may even argue that this plan from Reform UK might already be the thing that clinches them the next election. Because, as you say, will the Conservatives go as far? We expect them to come out at their conference and say we're going to leave the ECHR, but are they going to scrap the Human Rights Act? Are they going to derogate from the Refugee Convention? I suppose we'll give Kemi Badenoch her due. She's ordered a full review from Lord Wolfson, her Shadow Attorney General, who said he's going to outline all the ways in which, and I think to Kemi Badenoch's credit, she does actually try to get into the detail. The problem is, it's through long, bureaucratic, drawn-out processes, whilst then allowing the pitch to be vacated, allow Reform UK to fill it quite literally with their football shirts that are sold out so quickly. And then as for Labour, I think they've talked the talk, but the problem is when Sir Keir Starmer gives interviews saying, oh, that speech I gave on migration, which was billed as the big speech to take on Reform and Farage. By the way, I didn't actually read it properly. Yeah. And the bit where I said that we're an island of strangers, oh, I really regret using that. That was a mistake. And then when obviously realising that got backlash, going, oh no, the sentiment is what I meant. I just wouldn't have used those exact words. Yeah, it's just a mess, right?
Managing to clinch a defeat from the jaws of victory. Exactly. I mean, all they had to do, didn't even have to mention it at all. Yeah, and if question could have been, that's not what I meant. And they just crack on. No, that's all you'd have to do, instead of actually making one of your interviews an apology for the most successful thing you've said in months.
That's true, right? We've had some texts already come in here. We've got Tim, who's a veteran. Thank you for your service, Tim. What is wrong with putting illegals on old military bases, policed by armed military? It was good enough for me at 17 when I served. Well, Tim, some people will argue that it shouldn't be. They don't want them, basically. People will not want disused military bases in their communities being used out of fear of what that will do to the local area. But I suppose Reform will argue, well, unlike other plans that the Conservatives had, where people would be still being allowed to leave the site and go and about, they will be detained and kept under. Another one here. Morning, Steve and Jonathan. Surely after decades of utter contempt for the country and the British people by the Tories and Labour parties, the Uni Party cannot be trusted anymore. That's Dean from Dagenham. I think the texts have already made it clear. And guess what? We want you to tell us what you're thinking. So you call in 0344 499 1000. You can also WhatsApp us on that number too and send in voice notes. I love to play voice notes, so send it in. Or you can text the word talk, the starting message, to 87222 and follow and message us on X at talkTV. We'll see you soon.
state describe Rudabakana as a boy with needs. That is astonishing and gives you such a clear insight into the woke, liberal, hand-wringing, pathetic and frankly dangerous thinking that pervades not only senior people in the prison system, but the sentencing council, the parole board, and many other aspects of public life today.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, everybody. Wow, I'm sure my dulcet tones are the way that you dreamed of waking up on a Saturday morning. And I'm sure for those of you who are due to wake up and listen back to us, hello, and I hope you're going to have a fantastic weekend ahead of you. Well, we go to the next big story, which is, of course, the fact that Lucy Connolly, who was arrested, pled guilty, was sentenced to, I think, 31 months in prison, albeit didn't serve that full sentence, for a tweet that she posted, which she then deleted 4 hours after posting it, apologised for, but was sort of now become the poster girl, as it were, for what's been going on when it comes to tackling free speech and indeed people having their views heard and said around the issue of illegal migration. We've got the Sun here that has made it perfectly clear. I was the Prime Minister's political prisoner for a year, says Lucy Connolly, and we have a big interview with the Alison Pearson of the Daily Telegraph, who says I was also Starmer's political prisoner. In fact, we do have a clip that we're going to play you of that big interview with Alison Pearson and Lucy Connolly.
Have you been Keir Starmer's political prisoner?
Absolutely. And me and several other people. Like I said, it's important to remember that it wasn't just me. He needs to practice what he preaches. I think, you know, he's a human rights lawyer, so maybe he needs to quite, you know, look back at what people's human rights are, what freedom of speech means, and what the laws are in this country.
Well, I want to know what you think. Do you think Lucy Connolly is indeed a political prisoner, or do you think she was right to go to prison for what she said? Look, I'll make it perfectly clear for me. I think the tweet that she put out was disgusting and was wrong, but she herself has admitted that. In fact, in this interview with Alison Pearson, she admits it was, quote, not her finest moment, and says it came from a moment of red mist after recalling the loss of her own child. Obviously, this was on the backdrop of those horrific Southport murders that took place from that disgusting scumbag who is locked away in prison, and we'll be going on to him and his rights in prison shortly. But she deleted the tweet 4 hours after posting it. She apologised and admitted that it was wrong. Did it really require her to not just be held on remand, which seems extraordinary to me, when literal paedophiles like Hugh Edwards are allowed to walk the streets whilst going through their court case and then not even face any jail time after being found to have indecent images of children, some of them are the highest category going? Was it right for Lucy Connolly to be sentenced to 31 months in prison? Was Sir Keir Starmer prejudicial in the things that he said when he was saying that people were being arrested and he wanted the book thrown at people? I mean, Steve, this is an explosive interview, really, from Lucy Connolly. Many people may have said she's done her time in prison, she's obviously had a horrific time. You know, some would have said rightly she may have just decided to try and go quietly. She's decided to come out swinging, hasn't she?
She has. I'm not sure if she would have had the option of going quietly, because it's such a story. I'm actually surprised it's only on the front page of two newspapers out of all of them. You look at the Express, and while they're talking about, you know, international needs, you think this would be an Express kind of story. But so, yeah, Sun and Telegraph gone with it big, and Telegraph's got the interview. She might as well turn and face the storm. This was good. This is now what she's famous for. This, you might as well have your say. Although, I mean, the last time she expressed an opinion, it ends up with her going to prison. So maybe she needs to be careful. But no, the tricky thing about this is you need to split up in your head the concept between defending what she said and defending her right to not go to prison for it. It's not even the right to say it, and the consequences. I'm all about free speech, and of course there are consequences for free speech. The consequence doesn't seem to fit, though. That's the problem here. So if it was a fine, or, you know, I mean, getting banned from the social media platform, maybe, I think maybe a little bit of community service, volunteering with a fire department would have been a good idea, seeing as the tweet was talking about fire stuff. There would have been a nice nice fit there, but the idea that, no, you're the kind of criminal we need to lock up. Locking up, part of sending people to prison is to protect society from someone. What? You could have just not given her a password again, and you've protected society from some tweets. So there is no way the level of punishment fits, and that's what the argument needs to be. I've seen online these debate go on. If you try and kind of say this is a free speech issue, people say, oh, you're an apologist for racism. No, you're not defending the content of the tweet. Even Lucy's not defending the content of the tweet, but you can make an argument saying, maybe I can't think of a tweet that should send you to prison.
No, I agree with you, and I think this is the problem, isn't it? There's some people, when it comes to free speech, on the very libertarian viewpoint, which is that ultimately we should be able to say what we want, and if people get offended, that's their problem. But if we live in a free and fair society, everything should be on the table. I am someone who thinks absolutely you should have free speech, but that does come with responsibilities. You cannot just say what you want in terms of inciting violence or hatred, or indeed obviously being racist, misogynist, and all the others that follow after that, homophobic and stuff like that. That would be disgusting and immoral as far as I'm concerned. And like you, Lucy herself has accepted the tweet was very wrong, and it was. There's no defending that tweet. And it's odd now. I see some sort of in the mainstream media sort of saying, oh, well, you know, she pled guilty. So how can anyone be outraged about her coming out of prison now when she herself admitted it? Well, I question the legal advice she was given, because we've seen that Labour councillor who decided to plead not guilty and, more importantly, was found not guilty by a jury of his peers. But Ricky Jones, a Labour councillor, on the actual streets among a crowd, said that we should be slitting throats when it came to the far right, and somehow escaped any sort of prison sentence or indeed any punishment at all. Whereas Lucy Connolly, as you say, admitted her guilt, but then ended up with this extraordinary sentence. I think that's what some don't get. People like myself and yourself, Steve, are saying the sentence just seems so disproportionate to the action that was taken. Yeah. No one's defending the tweet, and no one should defend the tweet. Anyone does is brain bird dead moron, as far as I'm concerned. But the sentence to actually lock someone up, when at the same time Sir Keir Starmer was releasing over 1,000 people for other crimes onto the streets to fill up to free up prison spaces, many of whom ended up being recalled back to prison after committing further offences or breaching their bail conditions. I mean, this is the problem, isn't it? That the left need to understand, and particularly Labour, maybe, who are, I see, attacking Kemi Badenoch for saying, oh, I can't believe that she's... Labour MPs literally tweeting, can't believe Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage are saying that Lucy Connolly, should be heralded as she leaves prison. Yeah, I mean, this is why I'm not quite sure about the sentiment of I was the political prisoner, because it isn't quite for the definition. There is certainly politics involved in this, but yeah, you can plead guilty and still not get sent to prison. Those two aren't linked. You know, the judge could have been like, all right, yeah, you agree it was bad, here's your fine. And in one of the interviews, she gave a couple, didn't she? And one of them, I was listening to her saying part of the reason she pleaded guilty was because she didn't think she'd get a fair trial. Now, I don't know how much of that is just really bad legal advice, how much of that is the paranoia of the time, because you had the Prime Minister saying things, doing statements saying that these people will have the book thrown at them. And you can kind of, hopefully he was meaning the protesters, not the tweeters. No one was sitting there going, yeah, I totally agree, we should be banging up the tweeters. The protesters are a different thing. But she clearly thought that it was going to impact the fairness of the trial she got. And that's where the problem is. That's where the two-tier comes in, doesn't it? The fact that she got that advice. And I think two-tier care absolutely is deserved at the end of the day, because, as you say, it was all well and good to attack those who were on the streets and turned from protest to mob in some cases. And look, in Stoke-on-Trent, where I'm from, there were disgusting scenes of people throwing or attacking objects or attacking police vans and police officers, as well as obviously just seeking to have some sort of football violence. And most of these people would have been people that have got a long history in terms of looking for a scrap. But at the same time in Stoke-on-Trent, there were the counter-protesters, what I would call the Islamist extremists in some parts of our society, sadly, his puts it here, being very rife in places like Stoke-on-Trent, who were also then seeking to antagonise and to have a fight over what was being said as well. And yet we didn't see the same sort of condemnation for those type of scenes as well. And I think that's the problem here. It's the perception, again, understandably so, of how one section, Keir Starmer famously saying, protesters are far right, albeit he would say, I was describing politicians who were enabling maybe the far right with some of the stuff they were saying. But the public have seen Labour had to be dragged to finally take a national inquiry into grooming gangs.
Yeah.
They've had to be dragged into saying that for things like Keir Starmer is now a patriot. He was boasting about that the other day, and that he believes the flag should be flying. Dragged into taking tougher and tougher action when it comes to illegal migration. And the problem is people just don't believe Sir Keir Starmer. I think this is the issue for Labour. I think no matter what they do now, as long as Keir Starmer's the leader of the Labour Party, they're doomed to at least lose their majority. They may come back as the largest party, but I think their majority's gone whilst Keir Starmer's the face, because he as a person is so distrusted.
Yeah, a lot of what Labour have been doing comes down to an issue of optics. Some of it are good ideas delivered so badly you think, how have you managed to mess this one up? And in this, like, there would have been a win. Again, if you could listen to the complaints and the worries of people and not follow through in a way that makes them the problem, that makes them the criminals. People tweeting, tweets that you don't like, you should have taken down or something, but realise the reason that these protests started, not the righty part, which, you know, throw the book at those who breach the rule that turns it into a riot. But if you've gone on a protest because you've heard a story that's hit you emotionally about what happened to some children, they're not the baddies. If you're out really upset by that level of heinous crime, you're not the wrong in there, are you? You're right to be upset by that. So those protests can be listened to. The riots can be shut down, the tweeters can be told to not do it. You could have solved this in a way that makes it look like you are making this nation better, and yet somehow Keir Starmer manages to find the worst way to execute any plan.
Absolutely, and I think it's a huge mistake for Labour to not come out and go, look, we're not comfortable seeing someone who's done one tweet. And also the idea of incitement to violence, I don't know how you can prove that that one tweet that was up for 4 hours was responsible for the mindless thugs who then went on to commit offences that absolutely deserves to have the rule book thrown at them. No one on this station thinks violence is the answer. Anyone who was acting in a violent manner or breaking public order should absolutely have the rule book thrown at them. I don't allow violence whether you're on the left or the right of British politics, whether you're a British national, whether you're a foreign national offender, or whether you're a Christian or a Muslim, whatever it is. Violence is never the answer, and if you break the law, you should face the same consequences. But that's the problem. The same consequences, and people would argue that hasn't happened in this case.
It would be fascinating to actually see someone who, because the actual tweet was something like, set fire to the hotels for all I care. The idea that you could find someone and go like, I set fire to it because that tweeter said they were nonplussed either way. It wasn't even like go and do it. It was for all I care. I wouldn't have done it if Lucy Connolly said she would care. She wanted me to stop. So yeah, there can be no link.
And I think that's the difference, right? With the US legal system, for example, you'd have to actually prove that that tweet, for example, did indeed lead to some form of violence taking place. Whereas in here, it's allowed to sort of be interpreted that it was, it could have stirred the pot.
Although I can see we have a slightly better system sometimes, because there could be some book that you write or some message that you send that doesn't have a proven one person doing it, but it's clearly inciting racial violence. You could do that. So our system might be better in some cases if it's wielded properly, and that's what's not happening with our legal system at the moment. I don't think the law was set up to punish a tweeter.
Well, look, we've got more and more coming on. You can see there that the tweet on your screen now for those tuning in of what Lucy Connolly said. As I say, it was a dreadful tweet. It wasn't appropriate. She herself has admitted that, but hey, did she deserve 31 months in prison? I don't think so, and I'd be keen to get your views. Do you think she's a political prisoner? Do you think we live under two-tier care? After the break, we've got Kemi Badenoch, who's on the front page of the Mail, or she was on the front page of the Mail until we had some more Jeffrey Epstein and Josiana Maxwell stories coming on. But she's written in the Mail talking about the argument over flags. Do you think we should be flying our flag proudly from whatever lamppost or government building we should be able to hang it on? Well, guess what? 0344 499 1000 is how you can call in or indeed send us a message or a voice note on WhatsApp. You can text in with the word talk and start your message to 87222, and you can follow our messages on X at talkTV. We'll see you soon.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, everybody. Stretch those arms, get your brew on, and make sure that you've got your tea and your toast ready to go for the day ahead, because we are delighted to have you joining us here on the home of common sense. That is Talk with me, Jonathan Gullis, sitting in for the incredible Alex Phillips on Weekend Breakfast. I'm delighted to have comedian and broadcaster Stephen Allen in the studio with me, and we've been going through the headlines, and I'll recap them after the next break. But we move to our next big story, which, as I say, for Kate Badenoch probably sums up the Conservative Party situation. She was on the front page of the Daily Mail with a big exclusive here about Kemi, fly our flag proudly, in a pushback against councils in Birmingham and in Tower Hamlets who've been removing St George's and Union flags that have been hung up on lampposts. We've seen a mass movement across our country with people wanting to display their patriotism as a symbol of that they're sick and tired of being told that maybe being British is something to be ashamed of. But guess what? You go to even places in mainland Europe. You go to France, for example, the tricolours are everywhere over government buildings, and they're not just on flagpoles. They drape government buildings all the way to the floor. Yet in this country, we seem to be the only one that falls into having debates about whether or not flying a flag is appropriate or not. Well, for those of you who want to go to Northern Ireland and parts of Belfast, I think you'll see that it's quite an interesting take, albeit there'll be different viewpoints on that. And I suggest that you probably keep your opinions to yourself, just for your own safety in that regard. But look, it was a great exclusive on the front page. Kemi sadly's been knocked. That's because of Jeffrey Epstein stories, which of course will always grab some headlines. But Kemi Badenoch has pushed back here, Steve. She said there's nothing racist about flying the flag of your nation. There's nothing extreme about feeling pride in your country. And she's called out Labour-led councils that seem to not have an issue when it came to the Palestinian flag. Places like Tower Hamlets and big parts of Birmingham that were flying and still fly from certain lampposts. In Birmingham instance, they can even get rid of roundabouts that have now been painted red and white for the St George's flag. But when it comes to collecting your litter, that still seems to be a step too far. I mean, is Kemi tapping in here? She's understood the mood of the nation?
She's understood the mood of the nation 3 days ago. So this is the problem, isn't it? That somehow this story is not today's story. No wonder it got bumped for the Ghislaine Maxwell. This is also 3 days after Robert Jenrick goes to Newark, gets up a ladder, pops up a flag. So they knew about it. I don't know why she's so... And this is unfortunate for her. She should be making the headlines. She should be the one we're talking about from the Conservatives all the time. But there's not. Someone else is always rocking up to Calais or Stratford, as I say, just getting in the news. And that's the job at the moment.
Look, yes, Chris Philp and Robert Jenrick were both vying for whose videos would go more viral when it came to visiting Calais after GB News and others had already been over there. So it's a never-ending sort of fight at the moment.
Give her another 3 weeks, Kemi will be there. It's just unfortunate, isn't it? But she makes a correct point. There's nothing inherently racist about using your nation's flag. Indeed, I'd start from the position that you can't ban a nation's flag within a nation for the nationals to use. Otherwise, it's a ridiculous situation. So it's also true, though, and this is the uncomfortable truth, to say that racists love the flag. But it's not a mutually exclusive, exhaustive Venn diagram. And the problem is, everyone says that the far right hijacked the flag. No, it's not that they hijacked it. What happened was, everyone else abandoned it. We had this stupid narrative of starting to say, the flag's racist. You don't want to use the flag because you'll have some Labour front bencher taking a picture of your house in Rochester and giving you throwing some shade. And if you're not a racist, you should use the flag. Because what happens is, if we're all using the flag all the time, St George's or Union Jack, right? If we're all using it, the flag's not racist anymore. The best way you solve this problem, even if you think the flag is racist, the best way you solve it is to use the flag more. And then you'd see it everywhere and be like, well, that can't mean anything bad.
Well, Steve, earlier this week I was debating with Adil Ray on a rival network and talking about this, and I had it put to me about, the question was, I said, and I stand by this 100%, so much so, by the way, there's now a petition to oust me as the mayor of Kidsgrove set up by someone, because I said I'm sick to the back teeth of seeing the Palestinian flag flying, because whether people like it or not, number one, this is the United Kingdom. The only flag that should fly is the UK flag. If you're in England, the St George's flag and your county flag. They're the only flags that should be flying from flagpoles of government-owned buildings, as far as I'm concerned. Secondly, I said that because we're not Palestine. So why on earth is the Palestinian flag flying, especially when Palestinian state has not even got any defined borders? And whether people like it or not, the Palestinian flag has been hijacked itself to become a symbol of a certain political persuasion, and is used, in my opinion, in order to to intimidate the Jewish community on our streets, so much so that we've got Jews not wearing their kippahs, not wearing Star of David in order to not identify themselves, and is also being used to try and basically bully people into somehow buying into the Hamas health ministry propaganda that's pumped out on an almost daily basis, as well as obviously commentators on the left in this country were happy to overlook the fact that this war began because on the 7th of October 2023, Hamas, a proscribed terrorist organisation, broke into Israel, murdered over 1,400 individuals, as well as raping them in some cases, and took 200 hostages, still keep 50 hostages, have taken billions of foreign aid from this country and other countries to build terror tunnels, to buy weapons, whilst their leaders live in Qatari five-star luxury, safe from the bombs, safe from the bullets, whilst their people are allowed to starve and not have investment into their community. So I'm not sorry to the knobhead who decided to not take seriously the issue that I raised out and wants to start some weird petition in order to try and oust me as the mayor of Kidsgrove. And I think you'll find, by the way, the majority of the people are on my side at the end of the day, so I won't be taking any nonsense from you. But I think this is the issue, isn't it? It seems that when it comes to other flags flying, for example, Notting Hill Carnival this weekend, people will be flying flags from Caribbean countries. No one's got an issue when it comes to St. Patrick's Day and people flying the Irish flag on the streets when they're holding up and watching the parades take place. But somehow, when it comes to the Union flag, we've got to be sorry, or we've got to apologise for our colonialist past because the flag would have been flown on some naval ship 400 years ago in the Antarctic slave trade. Well, guess what? My ancestors, as far as I'm concerned, were responsible for that. I'm sure yours weren't either, Steve.
Mine were dying in the mills in the Midlands, Arkwright's mills, yeah.
Exactly. So this constant need, and I think this is what's people have not understood. You've been told for so long that we should be sorry for who we are, sorry for our identity, sorry for what we believe in, which is that our country is something that is great, that brought a lot of good things to the world. Yes, like every country has a ropey past too, but the sins of the past should not be beholden upon all of us.
Yeah, the past seems like a rough place to be anyway, doesn't it? I don't like the sound of it. We're also not the only nation that did things like that, that's, went and took over some other countries, and yet France still uses its flag. I'm sure if you pop around and see what the Dutch are up to, they're not ashamed of their flag in the same way that it seems that we just believed the story that we should be. I slightly disagree with you about other flags, because it seems like you're more hardcore. You'd have no other flags other than just the two, your region and your Union Jack. But when the Ukrainian flags were put up as a sign of support, then I suppose if you allow that, you've got to allow other ones. Oh, you're banning the Ukrainian flag for special events and parties, stuff like that, festivals, I guess they go up. The thing is, though, for me, because you've had the other flags put up, you shouldn't be allowed to say, oh, no, this St George's one's got to come down. If you've had something attached to a lamppost, that's it. You've set up the new precedent, and that's you're allowed to put stuff on lampposts. And the idea that they're saying it's health and safety, you can't have things affixed to a lamppost because someone might die. And I've looked into this. Do you know how many people die every year due to flags coming down from lampposts? I've not looked into it, but it's zero, isn't it? I mean, yes. I don't need to look into it. No one's died of that.
And I think the problem is, again, Birmingham City Council, they've got elections up next year. Labour's already bankrupted, as we know, the council there, Labour-led Birmingham City Council. It's not exactly the best way in the lead-up to local elections where you might be losing control of your local authority to start having flag wars, essentially. And as you say, look, I understand your point regarding the Ukrainian flag. For me, I just think all this stuff is virtue signalling at the end of the day. And I think that you can show solidarity with Ukraine through many other ways other than having to display a flag. And again, I said on with Adil Ray, that the Ukraine flag was different, and I almost got this condemnation online that I'm saying that somehow Ukrainians are more deserving than Gazans. I was like, well, Ukraine is a defined sovereign nation that has undergone an illegal invasion and a war thrust upon it that it doesn't want to, whereas in Gaza, Israel had not occupied it since 2005. Hamas were the leaders of that region, a terrorist organisation. It was Hamas who chose to start the fighting. And when there were ceasefires early on, it was Hamas who continued to fire rockets into Israel, breaking the ceasefire. So it's hard to have sympathy when ultimately this war would end if all hostages were unconditionally released and Hamas agreed to surrender entirely from Gaza, which would then mean Israel would have, or Netanyahu would have no reason for the conflict to continue. But until those conditions are met, bearing in mind Hamas want to literally obliterate the state of Israel off the face of the earth, and along with it nearly every Jew that they can murder too. That's literally in Hamas's own doctrine for existence.
I suppose we're up on the sticky edge of freedom of speech, aren't we? Because you've got the right to be wrong. So you can make an argument that someone's point of view is wrong, but if you're banning flags, I mean, I suppose what we're actually getting getting into the nitty-gritty. It's where you put the flag. I suppose you're not saying you shouldn't be allowed to hold aloft a flag, because that definitely is
I've got no problem waving
yeah.
flags and stuff like that on the streets, you know, holding it, you know, like we see with St Patrick's Day parades, like we'll see with Notting Hill Carnival this weekend. That's fine with me. I've got no problem with that. But I'm talking about in government buildings that are, you know, taxpayer funded. That should be solely what those buildings are used for. And also the lampposts I don't like, because it is a sign of intimidation to have any other flag other than this nation, as far as I'm concerned, flying from lampposts.
We shouldn't need them on lampposts, should we? Because you're right, we should be able to be so comfortable with our flags that we don't actually need to go and make a point of saying, well, seeing as it feels like we're not allowed to fly these two flags, I'm going to have to pop one up on a lamppost. We shouldn't even need that. We should just be comfortable. If people do my way of doing it, come on, if you're not a racist, get a flag involved. I mean, I've not put one up in the house. My missus would kill me. But other than that, you know, there's a priority there. I'm not going to upset the missus. But lower than that, if we all use the flag and all this, then it's that I'm Spartacus effect.
Yeah.
If we all just use it, then you wouldn't know which flag's racist and which flag's not. So we solve it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I should apologise. I think I used a naughty word at one stage, so I want to apologise for language there that slipped out of my mouth. It is early in the morning. I should have had a brew to make sure I was calm enough. But look, join us after the break. We've got more to go through in terms of all the front pages. 0344 499 1000. Texting the word TALK to 87222 and message and follow us on X at talkTV.
Whether it's two-tier policing, two-tier justice. I think there's even some two-tier governance in terms of which flags and the heritage of particular countries are celebrated by local authorities. I think that we see it all around us, that there was one thing that I think that many people want. Now, we can talk about sentences, whether they were too stiff, whether they were too severe, whether they're too soft and lenient. But I think that what most British people want, from a variety of backgrounds, they want equality before the law.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, everybody. Jonathan Gullis here, sitting on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk, for the great Alex Phillips here on the Weekend Breakfast Show. And I'm delighted to have Stephen Allen, comedian and broadcaster, in the studio with me as we take you through the front pages. Number one is the Daily Mail. Kemi Badenoch, she was on the front page. She'd just been bumped for the Jeffrey Epstein story, but she was there saying, fly the flag with pride. It is not a racist symbol. She had a story there. Next, we have the Telegraph. Alison Pearson getting the big exclusive interview with Lucy Collins Connolly after her release from prison. Lucy Connolly saying that she is a political prisoner. The Sun does the same, looking at Lucy Connolly saying the Prime Minister made me a political prisoner. I'm keen to know, do you agree? We've got the Daily Star, which is always an interesting front page, saying Brits go balmy for thongs. There you go, Brits go balmy for thongs. Who knew indeed? Well, there we have it. The Times got the big exclusive interview with Nigel Farage, where he outlined for the first time Reform's plan when it comes to dealing with illegal migration and mass deportations. We'll be looking at that more and more across the show. The Daily Express has got here 1.6 million children stolen by Putin's war machine, a very serious issue indeed that's infecting many people, particularly in Ukraine, and will be a big source, I think, of any future deal that's done on peace. The Guardian has done what The Guardian does, talk about itself. Noel Clarke loses landmark libel case against Guardian. It's nice to know that The Guardian's talking about all the big issues of the day. And the Weekend, interestingly, voter attitudes to migration toughen as more asylum hotels are targeted. It says here, migration has overtaken the NHS as the second most important issue facing the country after the cost of living among 1 in 3 voters, one survey found this week. Quite an extraordinary mission there. And then the Daily Mirror has on its front page, Holocaust survivors call on Israel to end aid catastrophe as famine is declared. Stop starving Gaza's kids. A group of Holocaust survivors have begged Israel to stop the horrors of starving Palestinian children. So a very provocative and emotive issue that understandably we should all be concerned about, because no one wants to see any child suffer in any conflict in any part of the world. And I think that highlights the need for a solution. And again, as I say, Hamas release the hostages, surrender in Gaza, and then there will be all the pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu and his Israeli government to make sure that the aid flows in larger than ever before, and that the people of Gaza are allowed to rebuild their lives piece by piece, and hopefully in peace, more importantly, as well, alongside an Israeli state. Well, Steve, we've obviously got there the Weekend, quite big for the Eye to go there. Voter attitudes, is it a shock, or is it just the fact that, is this just a reality that because it's been in the news and after a couple of months we'll go back to the NHS being above migration, or do you think this all ties in, cost of living, migration, NHS? There is a string here that connects them all together.
Yes, but I guess it's the ecosystem that is a nation. Of course, they're all going to be linked. It's about what you're worried about, and it's what you're reading about, so I guess there is a lead to be taken from the news. But I think it's the difference between national problem and local problem, because we keep hearing that this is a national emergency. I'm sure it is, but the reason people are impacted by it is we're seeing the local version of it. It's weird, isn't it, that when you hear what's happening in a nation, you can think, oh, that's bad, but if I'm not seeing it... I used to be a cheesy local radio DJ in my former career before I did stand-up, right? We used to get sent on these training courses, and one of the best videos we were ever shown is a survey of people being asked about 9/11 and being asked about the local traffic on the high street. And people said 9/11 terrible, but it was just words. But when you ask them about the potholes on the high street, they're like, oh, it's absolutely disgraceful, I can't believe, because you're so close to it. And that's what we're getting now. We're getting hotels where the protests aren't in general, I don't like what this country's doing. They're going, I don't like what's happening to this area, to my area, to just a few streets away. And you'll always be more moved by that. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the version of it that is showing us how it's impacting our everyday life, not this theoretical other part of the country that we do care about, but we're not emotionally attached to. So I think it's natural that there'll be a hardening of these issues. It's right that we talk about it. We don't actually live in a world where you either have to hate all migration or love all of it. It's not open borders or no one's allowed in. The reality is somewhere in between, and that's where the interesting stuff happens, because then you get to think about what's the right number. What number is too much? There must be a number that's too much, because the end of that spectrum is too much. So where is it? How much demographic change can a local area have before you start to notice it? These are things you should be allowed to talk about without being called racist.
Well, look, a big thank you to friend of us here on Talk, comedian broadcaster Steve N. Allen, for joining us and taking us through the big stories of the day. After break, by the way, Mike Neville joins us in the studio to go through some of the biggest crime stories of the week. So make sure you get your calls in 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK at the start of your message to 87222 and follow our messages on X at talkTV. You can also WhatsApp and send voice notes on 0344 499 1000, so make sure that you do. Blimey, we've had texts coming in, we've got calls ready to go, and I'm going to make sure that we're ready to hear them all. I will see you after the break, ladies and gents. Get your brews ready. We've got a long way to go, and I want to take you through the big stories of the day.
we've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah, a rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, cripes, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive-bombed by our...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, Great Britain. This is Jonathan Gullis sitting in for the fantastic Alex Phillips here on Weekend Breakfast on the home of common sense. That is Talk. And you have been messaging in, blimey. We've got here Sharon from Staffordshire. Good morning, Jonathan. The UK likes to change British values to accommodate other countries, but other countries will not change their values to accommodate the UK. How does that work? We need to put our country first. Sharon Miller there from Staffordshire. Very sound indeed. We've got Dave who's messaged in from Dorset. The red crosses on small roundabouts in Dorset have been labelled as vandalism by the local rag. A Dale's text in, when Lucy Connolly put out the tweet, she did it in anger, but she did it rhetorically, regarding obviously Lucy Connolly being now freed. Another one, Richie here, Lucy was absolutely Starmer's political prisoner. And another one here from Warwick in Devon. Good morning, Jonathan. Great start to your show. Thank you so much. Why are these illegal immigrants referred to as fighting-age young men? They are fighting-age young cowards. Any men who leave their wives, girlfriends, sisters, mothers and fathers in the lurch by abandoning them in so-called dangerous places can only be described as such. A punchy view, and we know that we want to hear them. So 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK at the start of your message to 87222. And you can follow our messages on X at talkTV. I want your views. Well, I'm delighted, as I say, to be joined by a friend of us here on Talk. He's a retired Scotland Yard detective, chief inspector. His name is Mr. Mike Neville. He's also a fine Stoke-on-Trent, Staffordshire resident like myself. So that means you're getting 2 double barrels of common sense on your show today. Hello, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. It's good to be down from Trentham, I have to say.
Well, fantastic. And I'll be joining you back up in sunny Stoke in the not too foreseeable future. Now, obviously, migration is the big issue of the day. We've seen Nigel Farage has outlined Reform UK's plan to tackle the small boat crisis and indeed get mass deportations. We've seen Kemi Badenoch pointed out that she already has her deportation bill. Labour will say that they've got deportations up, around 35,000 deported in Labour's first year, and that they are processing, getting the backlog down much quicker. And they were arguing that hotel use was dropping, albeit now the statistics have said they're up by 8%. But look, Mike, I suppose we know that there's nearly 30 protests planned across the country outside migrant hotels. We have obviously seen in last summer, violence erupt on the streets following the Southport killings, which obviously no one ever wants to see. There is a lot of fear that the people are at boiling point and that violence could break out, albeit again, as I say, everyone here at Talk does not want to see that happen, nor would ever accept any form of violence. How serious do you think the mood is out there in the public about this issue? Do you think the government's doing enough to try and at least hear what people have to say?
The government, they're not doing enough. Well, they're doing worse, aren't they? Because actually appealed, haven't they, about the Bell Hotel in Epping. They're trying to appeal that decision about it being closed down for asylum seekers. So what damage is that doing? But what we see with the protests I see really a class divide. I'm really proud to be working class. I come from a council house in Bolton. I live in Stoke-on-Trent. And what I see with these protests in Epping, and you've got all across the country as far as Perth in Scotland, Cardiff in Wales, but across England as well, is the working class people who live, a few miles away from those hotels, who are simply sick and tired of this. They're sick and tired of people being shipped in who they know nothing about. I had to speak to my own 13-year-old daughter who lives down near Bournemouth and say all these strange... I shouldn't be doing this to a 13-year-old girl in Bournemouth. The people deserve better, and they've been utterly let down. There's just not enough being done. These people should be... I was a soldier. They should be put in a form of camp. It was good enough for me to live in that bed with a shared bathroom with 10 or 20 other blokes. They should be put into a camp, and then if they fail to the test, if they're not got asylum seeker status, get them shipped out.
Now, there's obviously been a lot of talk regarding policing of these protests. A lot of people showing videos online, albeit unverified, of police officers shipping in the Stand Up to Racism Antifa Brigade to demonstrate as counter-protests. Now, when I did a show here on Talk, I had an ex-copper, similar to yourself, call in and say, the police do not have to take counter-protests or allow counter-protests to happen at the same scene as it was the Bell Hotel in Epping, or indeed nearby those who are demonstrating that they're sick and tired of mass illegal migration into this country. Demonstrations can either happen further down the road, for example, or just happen at a completely different time in order to stop. Now, we saw the Chief Constable of Essex Police came out at the time and just said that he was enabling the right to protest, but the ex-copper told me that is a qualified right. Therefore, the cops can make a decision about when and where these protests take place. Are you frustrated that the counter-protests are being allowed to take place near these scenes? Because ultimately that is going to lead to tension and give Stand Up to Racism and Antifa what they want, which is maybe disorder, maybe some sort of confrontation, maybe things that are said that should definitely not be said, and no one again here would condemn. We would condemn that, rightly so. Do you think that's just antagonising the situation?
It is antagonising. As I say, you've got those working class people who are local, who probably live 2 or 3 miles away from that hotel, rightly protesting. Then they're shipping in these sort of champagne socialists, these Antifa characters, the socialist...
Balaclava up and masked up.
All with the same Socialist Worker Party banners and all this sort of thing. They get brought in from all over the country. They're not local people. And the problem you have is, when I joined the police in 1989, half of the senior officers at Scotland Yard were like myself. They're ex-soldiers who joined up. Now the entire police force, including this B.J. Harrington, who's the Chief Constable of Essex you allude to, they're all ex-students. They sympathise more with those characters with their silly Socialist Worker Party banners than they do the working class people who are there. And it's really got bad. But what I think, though, is that there's been a change in mood, if you look at it. So last year at Southport, you had Starmer coming out saying all far-right thuggery, condemning everybody. There were some wicked, violent people who deservedly went to jail and whatever else. But there was a lot of people who were just locals who were condemned as far-right thugs. Now that's stopped, because Starmer realises it's votes he's losing. They're working, normal people who simply want to do that. And I think he is putting pressure through Cooper, the Home Secretary, on the police to try and police it a bit more fairly, because we did see, as you saw in Essex, this nonsense of marching people up the road. There is no need. I've never known that. Bussing people out. In my police career, I've never known that. It was like watching a school trip, wasn't it? They said it was to protect them. Well, you didn't. There's no bricks and anything coming flying in. It's almost like, oh, you five next on the bus and all this sort of thing. It looked ridiculous.
And like you say, using the words to protect them almost infers, again, shock horror, that those people who are demonstrating against the hotel's use because of safety fears, where we know at least 2 men in that hotel have been charged with offences, albeit, as I say, for listeners and legal reasons, they have said that they're innocent of all crimes and they will go to court and face to have their day and trial heard there. But the fact that people like that straight away, oh, it's the far right are here, or violence could break out. Well, I think the Antifa and Stand Up to Racism Brigade, who, as you say, turn up, shout that anyone on these protests is somehow Nazis. They turn up with balaclavas or face masks to hide their identities. Well, if you're so confident about your cause, why do you need to hide who you are? Because it's interesting how the anti-mass migration protesters don't hide their faces, because they are proud to say, I'm from this community and I'm standing up for my rights.
They're absolutely, and a lot of ladies in pink T-shirts. They're hardly far-right thugs, are they? These are mums and grandmothers who just simply want their daughters to be safe. And what people are seeing is we're bringing in these young men from societies where women are treated like trash, where they have no rights and whatever else, and then suddenly we think they'll behave like us. Well, they won't behave like us. We've had enough. And your caller who said, oh, these men fleeing what? We hear this from the left. Oh, fleeing what? Where? In France? There's no war in France. The last one, I think, was in 1945. So there's no war in France. And just like your caller said, I've always said, these men must be cowards, because I was a soldier. I would have fought for my mother, you know, my relatives, my daughters. What are these characters? They're cowardly scum. They should be sent back to where they come from.
Oh, and we've seen, obviously, as I say, people are protesting. I will just reiterate to everyone, if you're out there protesting, by all means, speak loudly, speak proudly, have your right, but do not get drawn into confrontation. Do not get drawn into saying things that you shouldn't say in the height of your emotion, because the Antifa Brigade want to clip that and will use that against you. Do not absolutely ever go into violence. That is not how we should demonstrate, because if violence kicks off, it will give the left exactly what they want, which is to say it's thuggery, it's far-right racism, and it will undermine the message that you, I and many others feel, which is dealing with illegal migration is a serious failure of both Conservative government previously, the current Labour government now, and unless someone takes this issue seriously, we are going to see more of the same continue, which means putting women and girls in particular at risk. It means fueling illegal drug market and illegal black market working. It's going to see more hotels being used in our communities, undermining hospitality, retail, leisure, and it's going to also mean that we're going to end up in a society that does have very much a two-tier. Those of you who work hard and pay your taxes are going to be squeezed even harder in the upcoming budget. Those of you who enter this country illegally are going to have 3 meals a day, a roof over your head, totally free of charge on the British taxpayer. Another one, Mike, is obviously that we've got here, the government is now looking for 5,000 homes, because ultimately, and I'm sure this is the challenge now, exiting the hotels, as Labour has pledged to do by 2029, is a welcomed thing. But the government has not said at any stage what the alternative is. Nigel Farage has come out and said he would be obviously using disused military bases as detention centres. Labour seem to just not tell us what the solution is, but we've sort of now getting out, as reported in the Telegraph, that 5,000 homes or properties are being looked at in order to accommodate up to 20,000 migrants. So basically, if places like London, cities like Stoke-on-Trent, HMOs are coming to you, are they not?
They are. I mean, I saw a report. I'm from Bolton originally, and there was a report, again, people have been binned off in places like Bolton and Stoke. And the difficulty here, of course, when we got them in one hotel, the community can protest and say, we don't want them here. When it's like they're spread out in these houses of multiple occupation, how do we do that? They just, and as I say, who's at risk? We just don't know. Somebody's worked hard all their life to buy a house in Stoke, Bolton, Middlesbrough, where all these places where the government are happy to bin people. And then suddenly these people arrive next door, their home becomes valueless, and who knows who is in there? What do we know about these people? We've got so many offences where they're committing sex crimes against women and girls. It isn't safe. The whole thing is bad. The best thing we could do it, put me in charge. Let's find an island off Scotland, build a big fence round it, Put some beds in there. We can prepare these Nightingale hospitals for COVID within a matter of weeks. Get the Royal Engineers involved. They'll sort it. Get the Army. They'll build it. Let's put them in a camp there. And as I say, if they're real asylum seekers, I was a military policeman in West Germany. There were real people fleeing from East Germany and those wicked communist states and Soviet Russia. They were real asylum seekers. That's who we look after. And if there is anybody like that, we will look after them and we'll give them a place to live. But we will not look after people who are just coming across looking for a job as a Deliveroo driver or whatever else. We don't need those people here. We've got enough bad people of our own without importing them.
Well, going to some of the texts that we've had come in here, Sally's asking, morning Jonathan, is it Reform's plan to deport those illegally already here and review the status of those applications which have been approved? Unless we can reverse a lot of this illegal migration and also legal migration, e.g. return people who have come from places like Pakistan via small boats, or indeed India, Afghanistan, Eritrea, it will make no difference. Well, I'm going to have Gawain Towler, who's now the elected party board member for Reform UK, will certainly put that question to him, Sally. What is the status of those who are already here? Stuart Brown texting in again, never ever has the country been screwed up by so few, and never will the country owe so much to Mr Nigel Farage and Reform. That's Stuart Brown there. Another one here from Wales. Good morning, gentlemen. I live in a remote part of Wales and there's growing suspicion that there's illegal migrants being housed in dormitories on farms that were originally built for schools, mainly private, on school trips, doing things like co-steering. I'm sorry if I've not said that, but they shafted the farmers, that's they, I'm assuming the Labour government, and the private schools, and maybe this is why. Got to love a conspiracy theory. Have a good day. Well, Jack, I would always say be cautious of between fact and fiction. Be cautious of whispers until it's confirmed to you. But look, the government is saying they want to use a student accommodation. They want to use the type of accommodation that you're saying. They're looking at those type of properties right now. Another one here from Sean. Great victory for common sense in Epping. We need more of that. This useless government trying to block the case is further proof, if any was needed, where the priorities lie, and it's not us Brits. Instead of scrambling around trying to house these illegals, why not stop them arriving and deport the ones that are already here? We need an election now. That's Sean in Gloucester. Well, I tell you what, you've all had your cornflakes this morning based on the text that we've had in so far. I think this is a huge issue for the Labour government. And look, when we come back, we're going to get into the Crime Watch stories of the week. We're going to be talking about the fury as Southport monster Axel Rudibakana wins back his jail perks, including a TV after prison officer attack, as bosses bribe him to behave. What on earth is going on in this country? Well, let's see what you've got to say, because it's you, the people, that are the most important thing here, not people like me. 0344 499 1000. You can call in, or you can send us a voice note on WhatsApp, or indeed just message on WhatsApp on that number. You can text in the word talk and start your message to 87222, and you can follow and message us on on X, at talkTV. I'm Jonathan Gullis, sitting in for the amazing and energetic Alex Phillips here on the home of common sense. That is Talk on Weekend Breakfast, and we'll see you soon.
Labour government has its way, and in particular Mad Ed Miliband, we will be literally hoist on the petard of this ludicrous net zero business. And the idea that you should boil your kettle when the wind's... I mean, help me, mother.
Well, also it demonstrates, doesn't it, Neil, the fragility of renewables for energy supply.
Well, I mean, the extraordinary thing is that we've now become so dependent upon these intermittent sources of energy.
Yeah.
The wind doesn't blow all the time. Obviously, the sun doesn't shine all the time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Jonathan Gullis, sitting in for the great Alex Phillips, and you, the listener, needs to make sure that you are tuning in, calling in 0344 499 1000. You can message us on WhatsApp on that number, as well as call in and send us voice notes. You can text in the word talk and start your message to 87222. You can follow and message us on X at talkTV. We're going to be getting in to some more stories with my great Stoke guest, Bolton lad, born and bred, Stoke resident now. His name is Mr. Mike Neville, a great friend of ours here on Talk. He is a retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector, taking us through the big crime watch stories of the day. And I tell you what, we're going to start first of all with this shocking story in The Sun, which is that Axel Rudibakana, the disgusting Southport monster who murdered those innocent children, has apparently now been given back his privileges, including a TV and DVD player, in order to encourage him to behave. The triple child killer who hurled boiling water at a guard in May had his regime raised from basic to standard. It means he gets more money to spend in the canteen, plus time out of his cell. Rudibakana 19 has also increased access to workshops, the library and the gym at HMP Belmarsh in South East London. I mean, Mike, I think you and I can both guess. Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, is calling this, said he's appalled by this move. I think he sums up the mood of the country, doesn't he?
He absolutely does. I mean, I'm a crime historian, so I look at all famous crimes. You look at the Moors murders, the Yorkshire Ripper. What Axel Rudibakana did to those girls is beyond wicked. Beyond, we're talking 100 stab wounds to some of them. It's so evil what he did. He should be locked in a dungeon forever. Locked in a dungeon and given a copy of the Bible and a dim light to read it by. That's all. That should be his privileges, with food passed through the door. I'm an advocate of capital punishment, to be honest, and I would pull the lever. He is a wicked, evil individual. He brings nothing to this world apart from evilness. And so, privileges, televisions, like as I say, a dim light and a Bible to read. That's all he should have, ever.
When we know that we've got a recruitment crisis when it comes into our prison service, and people who do that are extremely brave and noble people, I have every respect for them. What does it say to those people in the service right now? You would have, I'm sure, worked amongst them. Some of them may have been cops who then went into the prison service maybe later in life, or indeed started in the prison service and become cops themselves. What does it say to those people that an officer can have boiling water thrown at them in May, and in August, TV, DVD, more money, access to the workshops, library and gym, more time out of his cell? I mean, it just makes a mockery, doesn't it?
Well, it does make a mockery. I mean, people of a certain age, I suppose, like me, you know, in the late 50s, will remember Porridge and the likes of Mr. Mackay, you know, that strict prison officer with his army medals on his chest. That's what we need to get back to. There would be no messing around with Axel Rudibakana if we had Mr. Mackay back in charge of the prisons. And this is what's gone wrong in society, I suppose. But the prison officers, as you say, do every day, just like I will criticise police leadership and prison leadership, but every day there's brave officers out there and there's brave prison officers who have to, you know, there's very few of them, then they're dealing with some very, very evil and violent individuals, and they should be given every support. And what's happened here again, they'll see that their authority has been undermined by giving this evil man these privileges.
I just don't get why we've got to bribe someone into behaving. Like you say, if you can't behave, then simply,
go in the dungeon.
If we're not going to have capital punishment, then you just don't come out your cell and you stay locked behind there, and if it drives you more mad and more insane, that's not our problem. That's not the prison officer's problem. That's a you problem. And quite frankly, I don't care. I just don't care like you. I'd lock away this person. I don't want them to see the light of day. I would never let them interact with another human being, let alone watch telly and DVD so they can enjoy themselves. I want them to, like you say, have a copy of the Bible, a dimly lit room, maybe one meal a day, because at the end of the day, that's enough to sustain an individual. Access to water, a toilet which they can quite frankly slop out and clean out, maybe. That's the only time they should come out themselves and have to mop up their own muck.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say to you, the evilness of that man, what he did, is beyond belief, and we must never forget that.
And like you say, the children who thankfully survived, but the scars that they bear, both physically and mentally.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, Richard Tyson, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, said, "I'm appalled. It feels like he's being rewarded for bad behaviour. It's the opposite of what should be happening." The Met Police are still investigating May's schooling incident. Since then, Rudy Buchanan, serving 52 years, has been placed on a 4-man unlock, meaning he was escorted by at least 4 officers in riot gear every time he's left his cell.
How much money?
Having to go to that level.
How much money does that cost us? Those officers would be better employed doing something else. They're removed from that duty, and as a result of that, we're all made less safe. It would have been better if he was dangling from the end of a rope.
Inmates on basic regime get about £5.50 a week to spend, but now Rudy Guana's on the standards regime. He'll be on £20 and can work up to enhanced level with even more privileges if they behave. A prison service spokesperson did not comment. I'm not surprised they didn't, because I suspect when they try to find someone who'd want to give a comment, no one in the prison service wanted to give anything supportive to that quote other than go, this is just a mockery of life in this country. We've also got in The Sun another heart-wrenching story and another concern about the safety of our streets. Jimmy Mizzen's killer could be freed again by Christmas despite violent drill rap videos. The jailed killer of teenager Jimmy Mizzen could be free again by Christmas, causing fresh anguish for his parents. Thug Jake Farage, recalled to prison early this year after we exposed, and that's we, The Sun, exposed his violent drill rap videos, has been granted a parole hearing in December. Yesterday, Jimmy's parents, Barry and Margaret, were preparing a statement to be read out at the hearing. Peace campaigner Margaret, 72, told The Sun, "I am going to put my faith in the parole board to do the right thing. We knew this day was coming, so we're not too shocked about the hearing. But it does cause a great deal of pain and suffering for the family as it brings it all up again." Farage, who's now 36, got 14 years in 2009 for killing Jimmy, 16, in a bakery in Lee, South East London. During a row, he threw a large glass dish that shattered, severing an artery in Jimmy's neck. I mean,
once again,
where to go with it?
Well, this man is a thug. I mean, the mum Margaret, Jimmy Mizzen's mum Margaret, has been tirelessly campaigning for peaceful things. She's a lovely lady, and people deserve better. But again, we find the establishment have lied to us, because when they abolished the death penalty in the 60s, we were told that life would mean life, and it was a lie. They knew it was a lie. They lied to us again and again, because these people are let out after 14 years. Jimmy Mizzen was just a young lad. He was a decent young lad. He was at school,
16 years old.
All his life in front of him, his life's taken away. Therefore, this thug's life should end as well. Lock him again. We'll have to build this dark dungeon with a dim light, and he can have a copy of the Bible as well to read.
And the fact that he's been released from prison, got into drill rap videos. Now, look, I listen to grime. Might shock you, Mike. I listen to that type of music.
I'm shocked.
I'm a big fan of that kind of genre personally. No. But what I will say is that if you're a convicted felon who's ended someone's life and you're taking part in gang-style rap videos and music, that doesn't show that you've been rehabilitated to the public. It doesn't exactly scream a reformed character, does it?
It doesn't. And he was actually bragging about the murder. So let him rot in jail. We've had enough of these people. What we've seen all the time, and it goes back to the establishment, this left-wing establishment that's ruled this country for the last 5 decades or whatever else. They're just doing all the things that standard, normal people don't want to see. We don't want loads of illegal immigrants coming here. We want violent, wicked murderers locked away forever or hanged. But they tell us all the time that they are cleverer than us, and they're not cleverer than us. They've just got power, and somehow we've got to ship them all out.
And then Notting Hill Carnival, as I say, starts this weekend. That always is going to be a bone of contention. We've seen the Mayor of London pushing out videos on his TikTok telling people to stay hydrated, don't wear your favourite shirt in case it gets messy, and to enjoy some jerk chicken. OK, cheers, Sadiq Khan. You know, really good for your input there. But rightly, there are people saying, look, is there not time to move the festival out of Notting Hill? Now, look, I'll be honest, I don't think it should be. I just think it should be better organised and better planned, which means that, you know, when we have events in central London or other parts of London, we see the fencing, we see the policing and security, we indeed ticket if necessary as well. Marches are able to go peacefully down the streets. But this seems to end up being a law unto itself. And ironically, the police yesterday managed to release that the Met Police, they made 100 arrests, taken I think 40 knives off individuals, around 11 guns, so great carnival atmosphere there for those individuals that are planning. I mean, the problem I've got with this is it's done the day before the carnival, so therefore it's the police trying to grab a cheap PR headline. Why is this not being done before? Why is this not continuing? You know, I'm not hearing what the police plan to do during the carnival. We're hearing though that they are going to use live facial recognition during the carnival itself to identify serious offenders and others that are wanted. Obviously, the police themselves are saying they fear crowd crush because, as I say, there's Notting Hill streets where I think it should be allowed to take place, albeit much better policed and organised. But obviously, those are narrow streets, around 1 million plus people expected there. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, Mike. Maybe you think, from a policing standpoint, it's just easier to have this in place like Hyde Park, a spitting distance from Notting Hill, where it'd be much easier to organise and patrol.
Well, I do disagree with you on this. There's no need. The actual dangers of crush there, it is incredible. You know, in a tightly packed street, it should never be held. At Hyde Park, as you say, Hyde Park, you could fence it off, you could charge people a £5 to go in, a £10 to go in, you could control knife arches, you could have searching for drugs and the like. This costs us a fortune. Let's look. Firstly, there's 7,000 officers on double pay because it's on a bank holiday Monday. It's costing 10, 11, 12 million pounds to police this. It isn't good enough. And I always go back to this. If this was an event in Stoke with white working class folk, where there was, like last year, there'd been two murders, loads of stuff, it would be banned. It is the epitome. Notting Hill Carnival is the epitome of two-tier Britain. Because I'll say this, you can go to Notting Hill Carnival today and Sunday, Monday, and you can dance with female police officers to the point of indecent assault. You can abuse the police, you can openly smoke drugs and commit crime, and you'll get away with it. That's what happens at Notting Hill. Go and do that at Stoke football ground on a Saturday and you'll be arrested and put in prison. It is the ultimate two-tier Britain, and it should not be allowed to happen. If we're going to have this, like I say, move it into a big place where we can control it properly, where the crime can be controlled. It is a mess. And police officers, there was an article in the Evening Standard about female officers being frightened to go there because they're indecently assaulted. All officers, male and female, are being attacked, and the crowd density is so much. It only takes a spark and there will be a Hillsborough-style disaster. And where will Sadiq Khan and the rest of the characters be then? It's not good enough. It should be moved. It's a dreadful event every year that officers dread to go to.
And with regards to Notting Hill, obviously, as I say, you've formerly been in the Met. From your experience, when you first entered policing in those over the 90s, maybe even early 2000s, was the festival still true to its core of what it was then, or has it now been for a long time slipped sadly into this lawless kind of
It was
event?
a crime fest when I was a young officer, and it's a crime fest now. So you said about the live facial recognition. The police have been innovative. Good, well done the Met in a sense for being proactive and arresting these characters. They arrested a load of characters before the event. They've got about 260 people who are either on bail or recalled to prison not to go there. I used to supply the human super recognisers, and they were sent letters to all the gang members saying, if you turn up at Carnival, the human super recogniser there will spot you and will get rid of you. So the Met is doing its best, and the Met has given warnings to the Mayor that this is really a troublesome thing. That, as I say, the biggest issue straight away, forget all the crime, is the danger of crush. You only need a spark where people will start running because they perceive something's happened, and youngsters in that crowd as we saw at Hillsborough, will die because of that, and it's a danger every year.
Well, nothing screams a carnival atmosphere like boarding up houses and boarding up high streets, although albeit maybe some people will say it's about time Notting Hill saw what a boarded up high street looked like when they have to see it on their own communities. And then at the same time, we'll also have a situation where, as you say, we've got lawlessness allowed to happen on the streets, and the Mayor of London seemingly more focused on social media and being popular rather than actually tackling the issues. And as you say, it's, you know, it does feel that there's a big disconnect between the Mayor, who is the Police Crime Commissioner for the Met Police, and the bobbies on the ground who are trying to say, we need you to take more action, take things more seriously, rather than gimmicks that he so regularly takes part in.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's all very well having live facial recognition, this, that and the other, but the fact's that even if you live in Notting Hill, and not everybody is rich who lives in Notting Hill, but what you've got there is the people are boarding up their houses because people use them as toilets. You know, it's disgusting. You know, the residents have to. Literally, a lot of the residents just ship out for the weekend because they just can't cope. It isn't fair. And as we say, the wonderful there's a lot of kids there in wonderful costumes. Yes, we'll march from Notting Hill to Hyde Park. That'd be a nice little route, and then we can have all the people, whoever wants to go there and listen to all this music, which you like, I don't, they can do so, but they can do it in a safe environment, proper police, properly financed. I don't want to go there. Why am I bloody paying for it? Why is everybody listening in paying for that nonsense? If you want to go there, like if you go to Glastonbury, pay the money and be done with it.
Well, Mike Neville there's going to be joining us after the break, where we will be discussing, obviously, Lucy Connolly's big Freedom Day yesterday, and we'll be getting and listening to Mike's views around whether or not she was indeed a political prisoner. But we want to hear your views. Do you think she's a political prisoner? Do you think Notting Hill Carnival should be cancelled or moved? Do you think that Sir Keir Starmer understands the issue with illegal mass migration? Do you think that Reform UK's plan for mass deportations is something that you can get behind and believe in? Or are you fearful that it's all sunshine and rainbows without actually any reality? Well, 0344 499 1000 is how you can call in or WhatsApp us with voice notes too. You can message on the word talk and start your text to 87222 and follow our messages on X at talkTV. We'll see you after the break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello everybody, Jonathan Gullis sitting in for the great Alex Phillips here on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk on Weekend Breakfast, and I am delighted to be joined in the studio by retired Scotland Yard Chief Detective Chief Inspector, Mr. Mike Neville, Stoke-on-Trent now resident, Bolton lad born and bred. What a great man he is. And I tell you what, the texts are coming in. Steve has texted in saying, let's have Mike Neville more often. Says it as it is, a perfect fit. Keep up the honesty. Well, I tell you what, Steve, I've just said to Mike in the break there that I'm surprised Reform UK have not been knocking on his door. Maybe we will see him joining the green benches one day for more of that common sense. I think the House of Commons would shudder in a good way, because they'd finally have people who just say what they think, not trying to worry about trying to say what they think might make them liked, which is always a big difference, because sometimes harsh truths mean harsh words, and it's not always about being liked in politics, but that's what the problem. Too many people dodge the tough calls. Now, look, we've got on the sun here Lucy Connolly. I was the Prime Minister's political prisoner for a year. She's also had an exclusive interview with Alison Pearson of the Daily Telegraph, and I think we can play a clip of that interview now.
Have you been Keir Starmer's political prisoner?
Absolutely. And me and several other people. Like I said, it's important to remember that it wasn't just me. He needs to practice what he preaches. I think, you know, he's a human rights lawyer, so maybe he needs to look back at what people's human rights are, what freedom of speech means, and what the laws are in this country.
Now, Mike, Lucy has come out swinging, hasn't she? She is, many people would say after that experience, she may have wanted to go and hide in the shadows. It seems that actually prison's hardened her and made sure she came out fighting. Now, I'll make my view clear again. Her tweet was wrong and it was disgusting what she said, but the woman deleted it after 4 hours. She apologised for it. She was then, I think, given very poor legal advice not to go to trial and ended up pleading guilty. Yeah. She then got, and I think this is the issue, a sentence that is so obscene and absurd, because this is the problem. Lefties and some of the liberal media are trying to paint those of us who are saying Lucy shouldn't have gone to prison as somehow forgiving her tweet. No one is forgiving a tweet. In fact, Lucy doesn't forgive her own tweet. She herself admits it was a poor moment for her and something she deeply regrets. But how on earth can she end up with a 31-month prison sentence, held on remand, not even bailed, when Hugh Edwards has been found guilty of having indecent images of children? He is a convicted paedophile. Some of them, category A, as you all know, the highest grading going, and yet was on bail and given a suspended sentence. It just makes a mockery of the system, doesn't it?
Well, it absolutely does, because, as I say, that what she said was unacceptable, but it's something that could have been dealt with by a caution or a warning. That would have been enough. She would have gone away, had her fingerprints and photograph taken, dealt with on the record, that's it. But as you say, the idea of prison, in my view, we talk about rehabilitation and all this. Prison, to me, is where you put dangerous people who are a threat to us. Now, who's a danger to us? It's people who carry knives, people who kill people, assault people, rape people, who have indecent photographs of children, because every photograph that Hugh Edwards had, it was a child abused. These are the people who are a danger to society, and they should go into prison. Lucy Connolly wasn't a threat to me, you, our wives or families. She was a threat to no one. Why in God's name was she held on remand? But as you say, the legal advice she took to plead guilty was bad. The best thing you can do in these circumstances, I think, we have hopes. Juries are quite a good thing, really, in this country, is to say not guilty and let, 12 men and women, good and true, decide whether you're guilty or not, because pleading guilty, just bad, in this circumstance.
Well, as I say, in that extraordinary interview with Alison Pearson of the Telegraph, she's obviously accused the police of dishonesty when saying she told the police she did not, quote, like immigrants. She's also, as I said, admits that her post on X was, quote, not my finest moment, but emerged from the red mist after, obviously this is in relation to that dreadful murder, the dreadful murders in Southport, due to the fact that she has herself lost her own child. She says that she plans to release into the public domain her full police interview footage. She shared some of the questions she was being asked. I think it's going to be quite extraordinary if she does do that, and actually I think some officers will be quite nervous about the type of questions they were answering. She said that she pled guilty. She thought that was just simply her quickest way back to her family, being advised that she'd be home by Christmas, not expecting to spend the many months that she did in prison. And she's potentially going to meet with officials of the Trump administration to raise her concerns about free speech in this country. I mean, do you think this is going to be a nightmare for Keir Starmer? She's even rumoured to be thinking about running against Yvette Cooper.
It is a nightmare for Keir Starmer. He's done for, really, in this. She is the most... His talk at the time and this far-right thuggery, saying that it was a good thing she got all those months, he's holed underneath the wall.
He's made her a martyr, right? She's now a martyr.
Absolutely. And people can see this. And we all do stupid things. We've all said stupid things, haven't we, that we regret afterwards. And we've quickly said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. This is a stupid thing. And in America, you can't be convicted unless somebody can show, well, you said this wicked thing, and as a result of what you said, somebody did this wicked thing. And so we can show quite clearly no one did anything. No one burnt any hotels because of what she said. And as I said, she should have been given a caution. That would have been enough, and our families, the whole country, would have still been safe. We're told there's not enough prison places to keep thieves, robbers, rapists, yet they can keep a woman who put some daft tweet out.
And this is the issue, Mike, isn't it? At the same time she was being sent to prison, Keir Starmer let 1,700 people out of prison, like you say, some of whom have got drug offences, violent offences, sexual offences on their record in order to free up prison spaces. Well, what good is it putting someone in prison for a tweet when we've got literal rapists, literal gang members back on our streets, many of whom who have been recalled back to prison?
How embarrassing is it that this country, the beacon of hope, you know, from the Second World War for freedom, the Magna Carta, where America looks to us as the birth of parliamentary democracy, we've now got Americans looking at this country and saying, what has happened to Britain? It's on an international stage. This is utterly tragic. It is just I know American friends of mine, they look to us. They look to us as this birthplace of democracy. What has become of it? It's just terrible.
I think there was a statement from, I think it was North Northamptonshire Police, I apologise if I've got the wrong force there, but they have said that they plan to go and meet with Miss Connolly to talk to her, obviously, about the things that she said. I would probably advise them. They are the last people she wants to talk to right now, and best to be avoided. We've got in here again some text. Steve in Wales, we need Mike Neville and Peter Blexley in Reform UK. Now that would be the flying squad. Well, there you go. Mike, great text coming in there. Another one here. Absolutely agree that she was a political prisoner, and for Starmer to say he doesn't know anything about this case, he is lying again. That's Karen from Ruislip. When it comes to Notting Hill, housing illegal migrants, Patrick in Cornwall said, can we not use Glastonbury to house migrants? Secure site with infrastructure to hold them in tents. Well, it doesn't sound like a bad idea to me. And another one here from Vinny. Let's not forget that they are illegal. If it was you or me with no fixed address in court, there would be no bail at all. I think Vinny makes a very good point there. Ladies and gents, as I say, we want you to keep texting and calling in. The number is 0344 499 1000. That's how you can call us, that's how you can WhatsApp us, and you can voice note us. And I'm desperate to play some voice notes, so please send them in. You can also text the word talk to 87222, and you can message and follow us on X at talkTV. We'll see you shortly.
Standing in a crowd. The minute you say anything that it should be changed or it should be looked at, you're called racist. But we've got to the point, some of us, haven't we, where we think, blow it, I don't care, call me what you like. The truth is, in the next 5 years, Notting Hill Carnival will cost the taxpayers between 80 and 100 million pounds. which, you know, how can we afford that when we're reducing policing in our city at a time when we should be increasing policing in our city?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. This is the home of common sense. And I'm Jonathan Gullis, sitting in for the great Alex Phillips here on the Weekend Breakfast Show, joining you, the great people of Great Britain, in hearing your voices and your views to make sure that we cover the stories of the day that many in our traditional mainstream media simply want to avoid talking about. And I'm delighted that I've still got in the studio with me Mr. Mike Neville. He is a retired Scotland Yard Chief Inspector, or Chief Detective Chief Inspector. Sorry, there we go. Finally got my tongue-tied words out there. I'll be getting his views on this story that we go to next, which is GCSE resits of English and Maths are looking at potentially being scrapped, and that Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, came out saying about white working class pupils failing more than ever before at GCSEs, particularly when we saw pass rates falling quite dramatically. Well, I'm delighted to be joined virtually today by Mr. Adam Whitlock. He is a deputy head teacher. He's just been enjoying results day for his A-levels and A-level students and GCSE students. Hello, Adam, how are you?
Hi, good to see you, Jonathan, as always.
No, good to see you too, my friend. Now, listen here, Adam, I'm quite concerned here because we've got the lowest pass rates in decades. This year's GCSE's results reveal that pass rates in the two core subjects, English and Maths, have hit a 10-year low, with just 58.3% passing Maths and 60.2% passing English. It then refers to white working class pupils hit the hardest. Among white British working class children, especially those eligible for free school meals, only 19% achieved what is called as a strong pass, or grade 5, as you and I would call it, Adam, in both English and Maths GCSEs. This is quite scary. Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, said that these results were, quote, appalling, emphasising they represent a failure by the state and threaten not just individual life chances, but the health of our society as a whole. I mean, Adam, it's nice to hear this from Bridget Phillipson, but is this new news, or is this something we've known about for a while now?
We have known about this for a very long time, and having worked in London for the better part of 15 years, you know, we've seen students with great disadvantage be pulled through and get some amazing results in English, language and maths. The school that I've been working at for a long time has just had some brilliant set of results with, you know, 50% at least pupil premium students that we're looking at there. You look at the Michaela School, 100%. Which is incredible. But what worries me most is we've got an education secretary who is talking about this in a very slogan way, but actually isn't really talking about the need to raise standards across the country. And I think about those post-industrial towns. I think about those white working class children up and down the country that have really missed out on those grades. Where are they going to be left? So I do recognise that the problem is there. Bridget Phillipson clearly recognises the problem is there. But my big question is, what is she doing about it when she's ignoring schools like Michaela in London, which clearly have a great blueprint for doing something?
I think you made a great point there, Adam. And I think this is my frustration, is that I was a member of the Education Select Committee in the last Parliament. And back in 2021, I think it was, maybe 2022, we produced a report specifically about the plight of white working class British students, particularly free school meals, and how only Gypsy Roma is any other ethnic group that is actually performing worse than them when it comes to educational outcomes, when it comes to life chances, and going and progressing on to further or higher education. And the Labour MPs on the committee voted down that report in 2021, citing that they didn't think it was fair because it was not taking properly into account, sort of racial disadvantage or a white privilege, I suppose, as they would say. I mean, doesn't this just scream of the issue that we have in the education system, that, it's all well and good pushing along the EBAC, which is your English baccalaureate, so English, maths, a foreign language, your traditional core subjects that traditionally go from GCSE A-level to university, but there are many good quality white working class pupils who may be going down that traditional academic route isn't the solution for them. But we don't have enough investment in the technical education side of things or the further education side of things, and that's where then a lot of kids are being failed.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there clearly does have to be a lot more done around that technical vocational route. But the one thing I'd just say about that is the idea of completely scrapping a benchmark of literacy and numeracy up and down the country and replacing it with something which seems to be quite vague. I'm not quite sure what the Education Secretary is replacing it with. It is a big problem for me. I mean, what is that saying about Britain to the rest of the world, to the global community? What is it saying about what our benchmark is? We're almost saying we don't have high standards anymore for all students up and down the country. And I think it's got to go in tow with, it's one thing scrapping the compulsory research, but if all you're doing is a white paper inquiry, some curriculum tweaks, doing a lot more central control around local authorities, etc., not allowing schools to really dig deep, going all the way back to primary, all the way through to secondary, as to what's going on with our children when it comes to reading and writing and numeracy, what's going on at home. There's just so much more that could be done, I think, up and down the country than simply these what seem to be quite slogan type phrases.
And this is my issue, Adam, with Bridget Phillipson. And look, I'm someone who thinks she's a very dangerous minister. I say this is my view, Adam, not yours. I'm just making it clear that I think she's highly incompetent. I don't think she understands her brief one bit. I think that she's hell-bent on having ideological warfare with private schools. The fact that she talks about getting rid of posh blazers or something that she did the other day, which obviously is a way of actually uniting a school in identity in terms of the brand, as well as actually being a safeguarding implementation in order to know what pupils belong to your school, and of course if they're in the community misbehaving, allowing the public to know where they should be able to go to complain maybe about a pupil's behaviour, as well as equalising out amongst children to make sure that no child feels that they maybe don't have certain clothes or branded items that maybe they can't afford but others can do. You and I both experienced that in state secondary schools. It drives me nuts that she wants to go to war on these type of things, and then, like you say, sort of she comes out with these platitudes. I suspect it's because she's in Sunderland and desperately trying to cling on to a seat before Reform UK oust her at the next election. We'll certainly see that play out in the local elections that are due up there soon. And like you say, without actually any substance or detail, I mean, what do you think is the solution here? I mean, would you, for example, support scrapping English and maths resits, or do you think that should be kept? And like you say, for white working class pupils, do you think what type of support is needed? Is it household support? Is it just better quality teachers spread across the country? Or is it just an acceptance that maybe sadly there's so many generations have been overlooked of white working class pupils because, as I say, they didn't tick the DEI boxes, that sadly this issue is now so entrenched it'd be impossible to ever sort out?
I mean, just to say there on that great point you've made, remember, she doesn't need any lectures. She's lived it. But, when it comes to what the answer is, I think there's a healthy balance that's needed. I would agree with the likes of Nick Gibbs and some others, that we need to keep these benchmarks of English and maths. I think they are important. Now, what they look like could be adapted and changed. They could be more modular, more internal assessments or functional routes for those that aren't going on that A-level pathway, and that opens the door. We need then better ways for them to get into technical vocational opportunities. There has to be some research and work done around what's going on at home. I think, one of the reasons that me, as I may not sound it, but when I was a white working class young boy growing up, it was the reading that my parents made me do every day that definitely played a role in my ability to navigate myself through school and the world, later on. I think it's a powerful thing. So there are definitely things at the parent level that we need to do, but we need to protect the curriculum. It needs to be knowledge rich, and it also needs to have opportunities for those students to then apply it very practically, should they wish to, through vocational routes. What we can't be doing is just scrapping it, having an inquiry, tweaking a bit of the curriculum here and there, taking away all control from schools, and ignoring some of the great blueprints in London that have taken place just because of ideological fantasy. It's just nonsense.
Mr. Adam Whitlock, Deputy Head Teacher, thank you so much for joining us here on Talk, a good friend of the show. Mike, I'll come to you before we go. That's Mike Neville, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector. Finally got those words out of my mouth without tongue twister. Mike, what do you think of this? White working class lads, you yourself are one, as you say, from Bolton. You live in a place like Stoke-on-Trent. Is it just a disgrace that they've been overlooked for so long?
It is absolutely a disgrace. I was lucky. I came from that Coronation Street house and I was selected to go to grammar school. It really made a difference to me. I've written 3 books. I actually sent one of my books to my history teacher and said, thank you for inspiring me. If you're good at football, you don't get put in a comprehensive team where they're mixed abilities. You go in the, if you're really good, you go in the top team. If you're really rubbish, you go in the 4th team. That's how education should be. The establishment have failed white working class lads in particular. And remember, we're free in this country because it was working class lads who died in the First World War and the Second World War. We're useful when it comes to things like that. But, you know, they've been let down with education, as you say, DEI, stupidness. And this Bridget Phillips, appalling. She's a class warrior. We don't need class warriors. What we need is people who care about working class folk who can then be given every opportunity. And as I say, get the grammar schools back. That's where we should be.
Attacking uniform just blows
Madness.
my mind. You know, I understand that not every item has to be branded, but a blazer is, for me, the one item that should always be protected. And then to hear her obviously go railing against private schools as if every parent who sends their children there is somehow is somehow rolling in cash, when actually they've made very serious decisions to not invest in their house, not to invest in holidays, not to invest in new cars. Absolutely. In fact, sometimes borrow money even because they just want to give their children the head start they themselves didn't have in life. I just think it's absurd.
I agree, absolutely. I am that person. I don't have a car. One of my daughters needs to go to a particular school. I pay for that. I also pay, of course, for one state school place that I don't use. Yeah, so get it back, but get those grammar schools back.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more on that one, Mike. And thank you so much for joining us. He's been a friend of ours in the show, Mr. Mike Neville, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector. And after the break, I'm going to be joined by Conservative MP Katy Lam, rising star in the Conservative ranks, to get her views on Reform UK's plan for their migration, as well as understanding how the Conservatives' plan is maybe more deliverable and more believable. And she's been putting out some punchy videos about indefinite leave to remain. We're keen to get her views, but I'm keen for yours too. 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and start your message to 87222 and follow our messages on X at talkTV. We will see you after the break.
We've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich, don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because in the 70s I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive-bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hey up everyone, Jonathan Gullis sitting in for the amazing Alex Phillips here on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk on the Weekend Breakfast Show. And what a great show we've had so far. We've had Mr. Steve N. Allen, broadcaster and comedian, go through the week's end stories with us. We've then had Mr. Mike Neville, retired Chief Inspector Detective in Scotland Yard, sharing us his views on the latest crime stories. And coming up, we will have the Conservative MP for the Wirral Kent, Katy Lam, sharing us her views regarding mass migration, both legal and illegal, and what we need to do. But before we get there, I just want to quickly read out some of the text that you've been sending in. We have a question. Morning, Jonathan. My word, Mike Neville. I agree with every word he says. This swamp needs cleaning out, and we need to start again with people like Mike, Nigel Farage, and all the rest of our Common Sense Brigade. Reform are our only hope. The sooner the better. Otherwise, we're done. We cannot take another 4 years of this sad excuse for government. That's Brian from Worthing, as well as another one here from Ernie, who's texted in, Jonathan, Tom Jones was banned from singing Delilah at his concert in Cardiff, a fictional song about a man stabbing his cheating wife, yet a rapper in prison for a real stabbing has his song about a real killing played all over the internet. You couldn't make it up. Well, as I say, you've been texting and you've been calling, and please continue to do so. But I look forward to going to my next guest. Her name is Katy Lam. She is the Member of Parliament for Wirral Kent. She is a Conservative, and she is one of the very few what I call stars within the Conservative Parliamentary Party. And before we come to her, I just want to quickly play a clip that she put out yesterday on her social media, one of many clips that she's been putting out regarding indefinite leave to remain, and keen to get you, the listeners' views on it.
It should take 10 years, not 5, to qualify for indefinite leave to remain. ILR shouldn't qualify you for state support. There should be no new visas, renewed visas, or ILR status for anyone who has committed a crime, received state support, or who is unlikely to contribute more than they cost. And where those people already have ILR, it should be revoked. Those who have no legal way of staying in this country must then go home. That's how immigration works. These changes are also laid out in Chris Phillips' deportations bill, but the government has repeatedly voted them down. If we don't take these measures, millions of people who've come here in the past few years, many paying little or no tax, will soon get ILR. We'll be on the hook for hundreds of billions of pounds. But we can change this, and we must.
What a powerful video that was. I don't think many of us will disagree with that. And she joins me now down the line. Katy Lam, MP, how are you doing? Oh, sorry, Katy, I didn't hear the sound there. I think we might have a technical issue. We'll come back to you very quickly. Sorry, apologies for that. But very quickly, again, that video reminding us of the Conservatives' deportation bill plan, which was regarding indefinite leave to remain. So basically, for residency requirements, moving it from 5 to 10 years for indefinite leave to remain. And I think Katy's back on the line. Sorry, Katy, a technical issue our end. Are you okay?
No problem. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now loud and clear. Fantastic. And we're delighted to have you joining us here on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk. Now, Katy, this, I'm assuming, is part of the Conservatives' deportation bill that you were highlighting. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. So we've made a couple of attempts now to change the law. One of them is a specific bill, the deportation bill, that threads all of these things together. And the other was lots of amendments that we laid to the Borders bill earlier this year in March.
And with the indefinite leave to remain, why is this so crucial? Why should people care about seeing it go from 5 to 10 years? Why does it matter?
So extending it from 5 to 10 years is just one of the principles that's very important. But the reason that indefinite leave to remain is so key is because indefinite leave to remain, as the name suggests, means that you can stay here forever. But it's also the way that our system currently works, the point at which you start to be entitled to, if you... on most routes, on some refugee routes, and of course, as is incredibly unfair. If you come here illegally, you're entitled to and claim asylum, you're entitled to a lot of these things as soon as you arrive. But for most people who come here legally, if you come here to work, if you come here as a dependent, as somebody who's come here to work, after 5 years, you're entitled to apply for something called indefinite leave to remain. Almost everybody who applies for it gets it. And that it then entitles you to full welfare. So you can get benefits, you can get completely free access to the NHS. Before that, you have to pay a charge. You are entitled to social housing. And it's at that point that people who've come here legally to do relatively low paid jobs, or as the dependents of people who've come here often to do relatively low paid jobs, start costing the British taxpayer, truthfully, a huge amount of money. If you come here, the health and social care visa, which 600,000 people have come here under, you might come to work in social care, which is very important. We appreciate people who come and do that, but you are not earning a huge amount of money. You might have brought a large family with you. And after 5 years, you and every member of your family is entitled to full state support on the bill of the British taxpayer, and that's unaffordable.
Now, Katy, you've been highlighting this, and it's great work indeed. And the deportation bill, as I say, produced by the Conservatives, says that automatic deportation for all illegal migrants, kick out all foreign national offenders, as you say, double the residency requirements for 5 to 10 years for indefinite leave to remain, a legally binding cap on annual migration, disapply parts of the Human Rights Act for all immigration-related matters, and introduce age testing for all illegal migrants. As you say, the Conservatives have put these amendments down to bills put forward by Labour. I think, in fact, this bill itself has been laid on its own entirely. We see now Reform UK has reduced their plan, where they would, for example, leave the ECHR, scrap the Human Rights Act, derogate from the Refugee Convention, arrest all illegal migrants and detain them in disused military bases, and do deportation deals with countries like Afghanistan and Eritrea. Are the Conservatives and Reform fighting essentially over the dotting the I's and crossing the T's, or is Reform UK's plan fantasy and the Conservatives' plan realistic?
Well, there's a few different bits to that. So the first question is, does somebody understand the essential problem and the basics that will be needed, the basic principles that will be needed to deal with it? So the Labour government, for example, completely failed this test. So if you're talking about illegal immigration, and I think the reform plan pertains really to illegal immigration, indefinite leave to remain is much more about legal immigration. But if we talk about illegal immigration for a moment, then the basic question is, do people get it? Do people understand what the problem is and what the essential principles are to solve it? Like, do people appreciate that the only thing that will stop this is detaining people on arrival and deporting them? The only thing that will stop channel crossings is killing demand, because people will not want to cross the channel if they know that if they come, they can't stay. Now, the government think that you can solve channel crossings by killing supply, that you can smash the gangs, and that by doing this, you will sort of stop the supply chain and so people will stop coming. But the reality is these are complex, organised crime supply chains which operate really across the world, and there is always a criminal organisation ready to pop up for everyone that you dismantle. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but it's not enough. It's not the basic thing that will fix the problem. And it seems from what Reform is saying, that they're also saying that you need to detain everybody when they arrive and deport them. That on that question of the basic principle, that I think both the Conservatives and Reform do understand what the key problem is and what the basic principles will be to solve it. Then the next question is about whether there's a sort of detailed operational plan to put all of those things in practice. Now, the things that the Conservatives have laid out are more detailed when it comes to legal migration, and the full kind of policy plan for illegal migration is still being worked on. I think, if I've understood correctly, that this is the full policy plan from Reform on illegal migration, and I think the detail is being published on Tuesday. So the short answer is, at this point, honestly, it's quite difficult to say, but it will definitely be interesting to see what they publish on Tuesday.
Based on the headlines, Katy, leaving the ECHR, scrapping the Human Rights Act, derogating the Refugee Convention, do you agree with those things?
Leaving the ECHR, I think that there is my personal view, which I've said publicly before, is that there is no way to control our border in the way that the British people have rightly asked for many, many times over many years, whilst we stay within the confines of the ECHR. The HRA is the UK Act that enshrines the ECHR into domestic legislation, so that's basically the same. The same principle applies to that. And there are parts of the Refugee Convention that I think are essentially outdated. If you think about something like asylum, the principle of asylum is that if you come somewhere, if you arrive on the soil of a country, that you can claim persecution and that then that country has to look after you. And that is really a sort of 20th century mechanism for a 21st century world. You know, when the UN Refugee Convention was signed, we didn't have mass communication, we didn't have mass transit. The idea that a person in Eritrea could look on their phone and see what life was like in Britain and decide to come here, and 72 hours later they would be here because they could message, you know, a serious organised criminal through TikTok. It was unimaginable when these conventions were signed.
And do you think, therefore, that Conservative and Reform should work together? Is this a good time to unite the right? Is this a good time to start maybe talking about deals to be done in order on this serious topic to show a united front, with the idea being that potentially Conservative and Reform after the next election might end up being in some form of coalition? Is this an opportunity to heal wounds maybe between the two parties?
I think the opportunity at the moment is to spend time, public dialogue, debate, getting to exactly what the best possible solution would be, and having two different groups of people who both understand the basic principles of the problem doing that. My hope is that that will end up with the best possible plan for the country after the next general election, because the top priority has to be getting this terrible Labour government out and actually solving the problem. This is set to be a record year of boats crossings. You know, all of the numbers on illegal migration are going in exactly the wrong direction. I believe, otherwise I wouldn't be here, that the Conservative Party under new leadership is the best vehicle to do that. But the coming months and years will be the chance to, in front of the public, have that discussion and have that debate.
And do you think, obviously with Labour's record now, 111,000 asylum claims, up 14% on 2024, 43,000 legal migrants entered the country, 88% of which were from small boat crossings, up 38%. We see, obviously, hotel use has actually gone up 8% too. Do you feel that Labour have been basically lying to us? They've claimed that obviously hotel use has come down. They've been trying to say that they're smashing the gangs, but the data says something very different, doesn't it?
They've completely failed. The first year has been a total disaster, and as far as we can tell, they don't have any more bright ideas. I think they essentially thought that if they came in and just really meant it, that it would be enough, but that's not how individual human beings work. The way that the whole system is set up is the incentive is for these people to cross the channel illegally, and they've changed some basic things that actually the last Conservative government did manage to do. Like, they made it illegal to apply for asylum if you had come here illegally. Well, it wasn't possible to apply for asylum if you come here illegally, which is actually one of the things that Reform in their plan has suggested bringing back. Now, Labour have undone that, and somehow they think that all of this is going to add up to people just stopping coming. And of course, unsurprisingly, the opposite is happening. More and more and more people are coming, and the numbers are going up and up and up.
And Katy, with the problem with the Conservatives that we'll face is, obviously, Labour will argue that the mess they've inherited is from the last Conservative-led government, that they're basically only in year one of their term in office, and ultimately this was an issue where hundreds of thousands had already come across the English Channel illegally. Reform UK will say the Tories can never be trusted when it comes to tackling illegal migration. Is this simply the issue? Not people like yourself who are brand newly elected. You're not tarred with the mess of the last Conservative government. People like me are, when I was part of that, albeit I like to think I was a rebel with inside the tent screaming and shouting for many of the things that the deportation bill now contains to actually happen when we were in power. But do you think the credibility issue is too big a bridge to gap for the Conservatives, or do you think that you can rebuild trust with the British public?
Well, I don't think it's too big a bridge, a gap to bridge, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But there is no question that the last government didn't solve this problem. I mean, if they had, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, because there wouldn't be any boats to stop. But firstly, on the question of whether the current government can claim that, you know, none of this is their fault, I don't think that that is at all credible. They've had a year to work on it, and they don't have a plan coming down the track. You know, if they had a long list of bright ideas that they were still in the process of implementing, then maybe there would be some defence to say, well, that hasn't come into play yet. But that's not the case. They've basically used all of their ideas. But in terms of rebuilding trust with the public, who were very angry and very disappointed, and I totally understand why. I think that that's very fair. Then the way to do that is to be as specific as possible and to have a very clear, very credible plan and repeat that plan over and over and over again between now and the next general election. And rebuilding that trust is a key part of my job, and I will do my very best. And of course, in a democracy, we don't know how that will go and what the public will think. But my job is to put forward the very best, what I think is the most plausible, most credible, most what will be the most effective plan to solve for both illegal and legal migration, the terrible state that this country is in, and present that to the public, and then they decide.
And Katy, final one from me. On the front page of The Sun today, we've got the story here from Lucy Connolly. I was the Prime Minister's political prisoner for a year. I just want to quickly get your view. Do you believe Lucy Connolly has been a political prisoner of two-tier care?
I think what's really sad in the Lucy Connolly case is that she pled guilty, and that then sort of put the whole case on a set of rails that it couldn't then get off again. And we see in cases where people have pled not guilty and they've taken their cases forward to a jury, that juries have said, you know, we saw this with Ricky Jones, the Labour councillor who called for people's throats to be cut, that juries have said, well, this was a horrible thing to say in the heat of the moment, but it's not the same as inciting people to violence. It's not the same as like running a terrorist organisation or something like that. And because Lucy Connolly pled guilty, she never had that chance to have that argument aired in court, to be listened to by a jury and to be responded to by a jury. And I think if she had, things would have turned out very differently.
Well, thank you so much, Katy Lam, Member of Parliament for Weald of Kent and Conservative and Rising Star. And just so you know, Katy, Barry's text in, Katy Lam is a rising star. If she wants to be in government, she needs to cross to reform. I won't ask you to comment, obviously, but just so you know, many people texting in with loving what you have to say. Thank you for joining us, because after the break, we now move on to our head-to-head, Mr. Peter Barnes and Mr. Gawain Towler. Well, I think we're going to have some strong views exchanged there when it comes to Nigel Farage's exclusive piece with The Times, Reform's Plan for Mass Deportations. We'll see you after the break.
What Ricky Jones...
That the state describe Rudabakana as a boy with needs. That is astonishing and gives you such a clear insight into the woke, liberal, hand-wringing, pathetic and frankly dangerous thinking that pervades not only senior people in the prison system, but the sentencing council, the parole board, and many other aspects of public life today.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the home of common sense. That is Talk. I'm Jonathan Gullis, sitting in for the amazing Alex Phillips here on Weekend Breakfast. You want to call in 0344 499 1000. You can also WhatsApp us on that number too, and send us a voice note. Texting the word Talk at the start of your message to 87222. And you can follow our messages on X at talkTV. Well, guess what? Our head-to-head is now coming up. We have Mr. Gawain Towler in the building, former advisor to Nigel Farage, who is now also party board member elected. Congratulations on your election victory.
Thank you very much.
Gawain, first election victory or...?
No, the second time I've won an election. The first time was at York University Tories in 1990.
Well, there we go. So, a victory, and joined as well by political strategist Peter Barnes next to him in the studio too. Thank you so much both for going on. Well, it won't shock you that we're going to the first story of the day, which is in the Times, the big... Oh, I'm just going to do that so the cameras can see. There we go. The Times big exclusive with Nigel Farage, who has outlined Reform's long-awaited plan on how to tackle illegal migration. For listeners who haven't tuned in so far, the plan is this: arrest and detain all illegal migrants, automatic detention on disused military bases, creating up to 24,000 spaces, deport with no right to appeal to countries like Afghanistan and Eritrea, where deals can be done, or other safe third countries, a bit of the Rwanda reheated, or as a backstop to that, the Ascension Islands if necessary. A new criminal offence for people who return to the UK illegally and destroy their ID, leave the ECHR, scrap the Human Rights Act, derogate from the Refugee Convention and UN Convention Against Torture and the Council for Europe's Anti-Trafficking Convention, have 5 deportation flights a day, introduce a British Bill of Rights and offer a voluntary return scheme for those here illegally, and where they can earn £2,500 and a free flight if they choose to go in the first 6 months, at the cost that is estimated of £10 billion, with £7 billion worth of savings due to no longer using hotels. A mouthful there, Gawain, but will it be a relief now? There's been a lot of attacks over the last 3-4 months that Reform haven't been producing this plan. I think we're going to see the full detail of the bill on Tuesday. Is this music to your ears and to Reform members' ears?
I think it'll be music to Reform members' ears. I have looked at the article, like you have, and all the rest. I think there's more details to come. I really do. I think that there's a lot, and I think that's probably how the Times wrote it, but there's a lot more weight on one side than the other. I suspect a lot of what is being done is being said because the assumption is, if we start this process, the carrot side, you can leave, you don't have to be locked up, and here's $2.5 to go. I suspect the carrot side will be a lot bigger than it looks in this article. It's all bad, hit, stick, carrot. I think it's much more, there'll be much more carrot than stick, because, and the other thing is, if people go who are here, overstayed their visa, for example, the vast majority of illegal migrants in this country are people who have overstayed their working visa, their student visa, and so on and so forth. Yes, the boats people is very, very visible and serious and doubled in numbers under Labour. However, the real problem is not that. The real problem is the people, the overstayers. People who arrived legally and then overstayed. Those people will, I think, be offered if you go now, you can reapply legally. If you don't go, then you will never reapply. And I think there'll be a lot of a sort of voluntary remigration, because the incentive structure, and this isn't about putting a wall across the channel. This is to change the incentive structure so people no longer have a desire or reason to cross the channel. It is about changing the incentive structure.
One of the texts in earlier, Gawain, was saying, just quickly, if you do know, great, if you don't worry, is that will this apply to any new illegal migrants arriving under a Reform government, or is this going to be retrospective to all those already here?
I think it'll be retrospective. That's the impression I get. I'm not 100% sure, but I suspect on Tuesday that's the sort of thing, that's the sort of detail that will be fleshed out.
Now, Peter, you have rightly, and I think fairly, pointed out that Reform UK have to start putting flesh on the bone if we are to take them seriously. They are indeed the sort of official opposition, in maybe not in name, but the way they're certainly treating them, and the polling
without
shows.
doubt, they're driving the agenda.
And they're driving the agenda. Do you welcome this plan? I mean, there's lots in here I love.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. On the face of it, I'm completely on board with Reform. My problem is, how are you going to deliver even half of what you've got in this article? Because they're saying it's £10 billion. Most actual estimates are putting this way over that.
Where?
Well, if you look at the IFS, for example, have said that most of your spending plans are completely fanciful. radical. I think they actually said they were dangerous at one point. Not on this particular one, but if you look at a few other things. But then let's add it all together. It's about £170 billion worth of spending, according to your own policy manifesto. And I'm wondering where you're getting that money from, because you can only doge so much. Because not to mention,
it's not just Doge. There are other things.
Such as
the net zero costs.
Net zero costs. That's fine. But
here,
again, not going to equate to even touching the sides of the cost of this.
This isn't 10 billion per annum. This is 10 billion in the first annum. And if you've got 7 billion per annum savings created by it, after 2 years, you're at 4 billion up.
Well, let's look at the cost of the flights then. On average, they're between 175,000 and 200k. That's just the flight, not the staffing, not the escorts, not the police infrastructure, not also the infrastructure that you're going to have to build to house 24,000 asylum claims. So this is yet to get an expanding cost.
We were able to build, as a country, in 12 days, Nightingale hospitals up and down the country. Yes. And this, no, you can't possibly... Yes, we can.
Yes, but the problem... the problem, Graham, is at this point, you're not going to have you didn't have any opposition to building the hospitals. You're going to have legal opposition to doing half of what you want to do, which is only going to slow it down, which is only going to increase the backlog.
Funnily enough, there was opposition. It was just railroaded by the government. If you have the will... The reason why you have legal complaints and legal challenges to many of these things is because the law allows that.
Yes.
The law encourages that. What you do is you change the law. That's what governments are for. And so if you come in with the mandate from the people, if we're saying this now, 3 years in advance from a general election campaign, if we're saying that, I suspect Labour's going to come in with a retail offer to the public of at least 1 million deportations, because the way the mood of the country has changed. The Tories will have something as well. The mood of the country will be, whoever's elected will be up for deportation, I think. Therefore, a legislation in Parliament will be able to cut down all these challenges and the delaying tactics and all the rest of it.
You've got to get it through Parliament to begin with.
Judges apply the law. If you change the law, they change the application. That's how it works.
But to Peter's point, Gwen, and I think it is a fair one, you're going to have a House of Lords where Nigel Farage himself has said, I don't have any peers. So how on earth are you going to get it through the peers? Then you're going to have the inevitable legal challenges. Now, like you say,
judicial review.
Even changing the law to say we can't have judicial reviews itself will be legally challenged. Then there's the fear of, if this bill's not, if the bill is written in advance, and I think what Reform UK has been doing in that space in terms of drafting the bills is good, because if you go in and ask the civil service, here's the A, could you help draft it for us?
It's not going to happen.
Good luck to you.
And to be fair.
But then how you're going to have strong, brave individuals who will have government lawyers, and I've been there in the Ministry of, in the Department for Education, who will say, the lawyers say this. Now, I always try to remind people, lawyers give you advice even in the government. You don't have to take the advice. You can still plough ahead. But there's an awful lot of pressure on a small group of ministers against thousands of civil servants.
There will be. But I think, as I say, the mood of the country is so strengthening, and over the next 3 years it'll get stronger, that the mandate that one has as an elected government, you're going to be able to turn around and say, right, this is what you'll see is politicians, and I wish it weren't the case in some
I don't
ways.
think politicians that's the problem.
Over the blob, because the blob is going to kick back, as you say, House of Lords, Judicial Review, the civil service. I can see almost a general strike being created. The trade unions just going, day one of a reform-led government, general strike for some reason or other, and there will be a massive, massive thing. But if you have that electoral mandate, if you've gone in being clear in your manifesto commitments what you plan to do, then the country and the established technocratic establishment, the blob, the swamp, call it what you will be at loggerheads.
I think that's a lot of fanciful thinking, because you can say that all of this, but at the end of the day, as we know, the blob fights back, and the blob doesn't fight fair. The blob will throw everything at reform, even if, and also, that mandate has got to be one big mandate, because if it's not, and you only get in with a couple of small majority, or smaller than, say, Theresa May had, for example, then I'm sorry, you don't have that force majority to force anything through Parliament in the country or not. If you don't
win a significant mandate, very little of this is going to be possible.
Yeah,
of course. But
so you accept Reform are going to have to win a majority outright in order for this to actually be deliverable?
Not just a majority, a whopping great big majority.
A significant majority. I think that is going to be required, but I don't think that's out of the question. However, you don't start 4 years away from a general election and say, well, it's not possible. Because you will never succeed if you sit there and go,
we're not saying it's not possible, but what we're asking for is a little bit more detail than we're just going to will it through.
We want more detail. You get detail.
We
want more detail. Will you get more detail?
Yeah.
We are 3 years out. On Tuesday, you'll get more detail.
I was about to say, Peter, I will say this. We moan about not having detail. We have got a lot of detail in that interview. We're going to see a draft bill, which I'm sure will get lefty lawyers ripping apart and say, this doesn't work and that doesn't work. I mean, that's more than any opposition I've seen do in my lifetime, as far as
hold on. I think that's actually fair. The Tories are putting draft bills together and things of that sort. One of the wonderful things about politics is there's no copyright on ideas. If we see something that's good and has been pre-written and we go, OK, well, actually, most of that's excellent, we can change it, we can tweak it, I've got no problem with stealing other people's ideas.
Well, by the way, Graham, I will say this.
I agree with you.
I'll say to both of you, Katy Lam was just on, obviously, Conservative MP for Weald of Kent, and one of the rising stars in the Conservative Party, and one of those that many think is what's keeping the Conservative Party conservative at this moment in time. She was, her words were interesting. She was saying that Reform understand, just like the Conservatives, the issue in hand. I asked her, would this not be a way now with the draft plan of the Conservative deportation bill, which is to deport all foreign nationals and to deport all illegal migrants, but carving out elements of the Human Rights Act of cases rather than simply just scrapping the Human Rights Act. She didn't say no. I said this is a good way for the right to unite and come together and actually basically prepare for potentially a coalition of some kind if it means to govern.
I don't see. I know what she's talking about, the Tory version, and I'm noting that she's quoted today, detain and deport. Well, that's something Farage has been saying for months and months.
Well, every now and then he flips his position, because this is half of the problem. You don't know whether any of this is actually going to be
one single interview right just after the election is not. Every now and then, it's been picked up and reused every now and then, but it was said once. However, a lot of this rhetoric comes from Millbank rather than Tory HQ, and but I just don't see the rump of the Tory party as it is being able to support what Katie's talking about, what Jenrick's talking about, what Nick Timothy's talking about. There are people in the Tories, but I think they're isolated.
They're welcome in Reform UK. Gwen, you'd like to see some of those people?
It's not up to me.
I mean, I would say this. It's interesting that this week as well, we've seen the run-up to this interview, a lot of personal attacks on Robert Jenrick. Robert Jenrick being accused of having been delighted and celebrating the idea of having opened more hotels. A very different-looking Robert Jenrick, it should be said, as well.
He was plump on that show.
A bit plumper on that show. Great, is it not just the case that Reform are attacking Robert Jenrick? Because one, you think he will be the person that you'll be facing as leader of the Conservatives come next generation, and two, he's to the right. Nigel himself said in an interview that he's to the right of him, so therefore Rob's going to steal your thunder, isn't he?
Well, he's either going to do that, or, and I think this is what Reform does do to a certain extent. Yes, there's knockabout front page politics in silly season when the House isn't sitting. This is
a silly season story.
No, but the knockabout aspect I think is. Basically, Robert goes to Newark and he's there nailing his flags to other people's polls. But the point is that all of this is fine, absolutely fine. The debate is out there, whether it's Jenrick saying it, whether it's Farage saying it, whether it's Katy Lam saying it, whether it's Zia saying it, and so on and so forth. This is all fine because it just gets the broader debate under the public noses. They can see what's going on. And whilst the fight between Farage and Jenrick as the standard bearer of the new right or whatever, I don't care. I just don't care, because when I was working in Brussels, I didn't care if my quotes were nicked by the Tories, as they were regularly, because the point was the story got out there. My favourite Reagan quote of all time is, "A man can achieve great things if he doesn't demand the credit." If you don't demand, it's all about me, and just say it's actually all about the debate, that's great.
Peter, what do you think about Robert Jenrick? Do you think he is a serious threat to Reform UK? Could
Nigel
he start to steal their
Farage,
thunder?
as I like to call him. He's the Pepsi to the Coca-Cola of Nigel Farage. As I always say, he is the answer to the wrong question. For too many people think that the Tories lost the general election because they weren't conservative enough. That's not the answer. It is because they were incompetent, they couldn't stay in the same room together, and basically they had 14 years and nothing got better.
And they weren't conservative enough.
Well, that's quite funny coming from a party that's supporting ballooning the welfare state, supporting nationalisation, supporting back bringing in terrorists. So I'm not quite sure what most people are considering a terrorist. Shamima Begum, that little U-turn.
No, there was a question mark
about the question mark, isn't it? You know, Donald Trump runs and says something, and then Nigel runs along after. That's quite entertaining. However, what I will say though is when it comes to Robert Jenrick, is He's everyone's favourite Tory who's not going to vote Tory, in the same way that Tom Tugendhat was everyone's favourite Tory who's never going to vote Tory. You know, he's that kind of figure that is appealing to a voter that's not going to vote for the Conservatives. He's great for the Tory base and everything, but in terms of actually bringing back the lost voter, he's not the right messenger, because what the Tories need to do, and this is where Kemi is more on track with things than anything else, is actually it's about the quiet Conservative that stayed at home at the last general election, which is the majority, the people that didn't fall for the snake oil of Farage and Reform UK. That is the reality of it.
Well, and there's one thing I think you touched on something but didn't go into detail on it there. If you look at what Kemi is saying, what Jenrick's saying, it is often in our patch. However, look what she's doing, bringing back James Cleverly, bringing back Francis Maude, the nuts and bolts on the ground, what's actually happening. I think she's looking at the political compass as it stands and saying, right, well, we're not actually going to be able to compete with Reform in large chunks of the country. They're becoming a much more regional party, and they are saying, actually, we need to appeal to get those people back from the Lib Dems rather than try and fight with Reform in the Red Wall. We're going to lose in the Red Wall against Reform, so where can we maintain? Right now, the polling has us on 35 seats. How can we double that? How can we triple that? Though you're more likely to do that, not fighting Reform in the north, but fighting the Lib Dems in Cornwall, in Devon, in Somerset, in Wiltshire, in Dorset, in Hampshire.
Well, we say that, Gawain, but Cornwall, I think Reform are the largest party, if not in the county. I think you won a by-election in Surrey, not exactly known to be a post-industrial town. I mean, my issue is...
But I'm saying this is what I think. Looking at the reappointment of Francis Maude, Henry Newman, James, things of this sort, then it looks that's where they're going.
And I'll say this, my frustration is, with this deportation bill, I get really cross, right? Chris Phillips was straight out last night saying that, this is just copy and paste of Conservative policy. I tell you what, and I'm going to rant again now because I've got angry about this again. I was in the room begging when we were in government and I was still a member of Parliament for us to carve out, at the very least carve out, I would like to see the Human Rights Act scrapped, but I was willing to accept carving out in order to make sure that we could deport illegal migrants. I was saying that we should just ignore the ECHR. I laid amendments alongside Danny Kruger, alongside Robert Jenrick, alongside many other fine colleagues, and most of these spineless so-and-sos that I have to now see sit on those Tory benches, 80% of them were without question willing to follow the government line and vote down those motions with Labour in that time, as well as tell us that it wasn't right, wasn't fair, wasn't moral, wasn't legal, and every other carve-out. Now I have to watch them pontificate on air and pretend they suddenly believe in this stuff. It drives me batty. I don't trust them and believe them, and I'm a Conservative Party member.
But then, to be fair, just so quick, a lot of those people now hop, skip, to jumped into Reform UK, like Jake Berry, for example. It's interesting how they cover. Well, quite a significant number of them.
I think Jake Berry is the only person of that ilk that you can name.
Well, Tim Montgomery, Sarah
Tim Montgomery's hardly been on the left.
Well, let's just say he was responsible for the Boris wave to begin. He was a senior Conservative advisor. You opened the door to him most of the time.
He was a senior Conservative advisor about 10 years before Boris. Come on.
He's still a player. He was still a player, yet you opened the door to every Tory opportunist, because that is what you are, the receptacle for all the failed Tories.
Yeah, right.
Well, don't blame me. That's what I hear from the base on the ground, that it's already infuriating with yet again a weakening of position.
I'll say this, Peter. I think I'll let him speak quickly, but he has said very clearly that for certain there should be certain ex-Conservatives who are allowed in, and that the tent flap is very much
the defection window is narrowing fast. But as I say, we would, as a party, my gut feeling and my belief is that we would take about 5% of Tory peers, about 7 to 10% of their MPs, about 30% of their council, about 80% of their members, and most of their voters. That's the pyramid I'm after, for the reasons you give. Now, the thing is, as the Overton window changes, as this world outside us changes, as the mood of the country changes, Conservatives are not immune to that. They've changed their mind too. I believe Jenrick is honest in his change. The man that boasted about opening more hotels for migrants is a different man that is now climbing up lampposts in Newark. So I believe that to be true. However, do people actually trust that change? And so, whilst I do believe that these changes in people's views are real, because the country is changing, the mood is changing, people's belief system is changing because of the reality on the ground. You can't say, because you believed this 10 years ago, you can never change your mind, because
so
humans
then why is
aren't
Reform
like
attacking
that.
Robert Jenrick for doing exactly that? This is the problem, is that yet again Reform say one thing and do a different thing.
Because it keeps these stories salient in
so
the
yet
news.
again we're going to play uni-party politics
No.
and keep Westminster exactly the
That's
same,
not-
despite yet again promising
No,
to
it's
change
because
how
it's
politics
August
is done.
and we're having a scrap.
Oh, well, here we go. Again, if you want to change politics, start doing it. Start being the change you want to see in the world.
we are.
I've got to make sure we get to our break. But he's heard everything he wants to be said. Is Reform UK unfair in attacking Robert Jenrick? Do they fear Robert Jenrick? And is it a reality that actually Reform are putting more meat on the bone? People should be giving them more credit. People don't scrutinise the Liberal Democrats, Greens or Conservatives anywhere near to the same way they're scrutinising Reform UK. And it's the reality that this policy alone is the way that Reform UK are about to head into 10 Downing Street with Nigel Farage as Prime Minister. You call in 0344 499 1000, text into 87222 the word talk and start your message, and follow our messages on X at talkTV. We'll see you after the break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, everybody, to the home of common sense. That is Talk. Delighted to have in the studio with me Mr. Gawain Towler, former advisor to Nigel Farage, and Mr. Peter Barnes, political strategist. And blimey, I tell you what, even though they are passionate in their views, they do get on. Despite what you think, they do get on. I think it's fair to say that Peter is very much just wanting actually Reform to have its feet held to the fire in many regards. And Gawain, I will say this actually, is also willing to speak harsh truths to Reform, its leadership and members too, because obviously one of the things I always love Gawain says is never believe a poll that makes you smile, and I think he will be repeating that time and again before a general election.
That in other speeches, actually.
Well, it's a great phrase, and it's also really important because, like you say, it has been a meteoric rise, but obviously one that I think many people will still be saying, is it actually sustainable? We'll find out, and we will see. I've got here Tony from Manchester. Love these two on the heads-to-head. Two adults talking in adult fashion. More of these, please. Tony from Manchester, thank you very much for that very kind text. I know the lads appreciate it. Now, we've got a clip of Nigel Farage regarding Yvette Cooper while she's interrailing around Europe, whilst at the same time, the High Court have just told the government and the owner of the Bell Hotel in Epping that it's no longer allowed to house migrants in the hotel. Let's see what he has to say.
So, a huge victory. Epping, the Bell Hotel, people protested, they won a court case, the Migrant Hotel will close. And that, of course, is now leading all over the country to other communities standing up, protesting, demanding their hotels are closed as well. Well, the news today, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, is going to fight that court order to demand that the Bell Hotel and other migrant hotels stay open across this country. Ask yourself a question. Whose side is this government on?
Well, there you go, Nigel Farage there on his X talking about the Migrant Hotel. First of all, Gawain, Robert Jenrick turned up to Epping to join the protesters. Why was Nigel Farage, as an Essex MP, not standing shoulder to shoulder with Essex people regarding the hotel?
Because Nigel Farage isn't just an Essex MP, though he was doing his interview with the Times in Clacton, as we see this weekend. But he's also... You didn't want Wellington inside a square at Waterloo. You don't want Wellington to be at Quatre Bras.
Comparison.
You want Wellington to be there marshalling the army. He's calling and talking to people up and down the country, reform groups who are involved in protests in 300 different places. He is not. You don't want your general scrapping in the woods. You want to have that overview. And so it is. I think it is. If you get too involved. Poor Jenrick, of course, he had no idea. He turns up, no idea who's there, and the left, Combat 18. And if Nigel had done that, that's all they'd talk about. He has to be very careful, and he's becoming a statesman.
So it's called political opportunism, is another phraseology for it, rather than statesmanship.
Well, I would say...
Because that's exactly what he did. He read the room, and said, don't get me wrong, he's a good reader of rooms.
Has Jenrick ever been to Epping before? Talk about opportunism. Has he ever run a flagpole up a lamppost before? Talk about opportunism. How dare you? I'm sorry.
But
what Farage isn't doing is opportunism. If he'd been in Epping, that would have been opportunism.
But not going is just as much as an opportunity, because again, it is reading the room.
Local reform councillors in Epping who were organising the protest.
So he sends the lackeys off.
No, they live there. It's their protest. It's their town. What do you mean, lackeys?
So why is he out there taking credit for it then? He's on there. Yes,
he's supporting them.
He literally went on the airways and said, without reform, this process probably
because it's true, because it's reform people who organise it.
You just said it was a local protest, so why is he taking personal congratulations for it?
Local reform
so he is reform. I didn't think he was reform anymore.
What?
Because this is the point. This is literally what he said. Nigel Farage has said, I'm not just the party, yet you've just said, it's Reform UK's victory, so therefore it's Nigel's victory, and he gets to make that post on X.
All right, stop.
This is the fundamental problem.
Stop for a second. Stop for a second. I mean, it's fascinating and all over the place.
It's not. It's just a coherent argument that you don't like.
There we go. Coherent like a bookend.
I mean, I'm not the one comparing him to bloody...
Well, if you are the leader of a political party, or a leader of a political movement and party, the idea that I said that Nigel wasn't reform is really weird.
No, I didn't say you did, but...
You did claim that I didn't.
No, I said...
So you've got Farage is in charge. He's ahead of it. We have local councillors in Epping who have been involved in organising those demonstrations. Farage he's not claiming credit for the work. They are reform councillors. So I'm sorry. So say another political party does something, and their members on the ground, their organisers on the ground do something. Oh no! The leader doesn't claim credit. Doesn't say reform did it or their party did it. Of course they do.
No, but that's not opportunism. The argument is
that's called leadership.
Opportunism is the fact that Nigel Farage didn't want to be tarred with the far right narrative because of who might turn up. That is just as opportunist, rather than standing there on principle,
quite the opposite,
shoulder to shoulder with the people that he's supposedly celebrating. If he was brave enough and actually leading this he would have been there. That is the point.
I'm going to pause it here because we are going to continue this after the break. What a discussion you're getting. I hope you're eating your cornflakes, because everyone at these two something out. I will see you after the break.
that the state describe Rudabakana as a boy with needs. That is astonishing and gives you such a clear insight into the woke, liberal, hand-wringing, pathetic and frankly dangerous thinking that pervades not only senior people in the prison system, but the sentencing council, the parole board, and many other aspects of public life today.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, and the head-to-head is still going. The bell is still ringing. We're in round 3 now of this incredible contest, and I actually don't know how to score it, to be honest with you. We've had people texting in accusing Peter of being a lefty. I can assure you he's anything but a lefty. I think he's just as angry as I am with the Conservative Party being a complete shower over the last 14 years and basically allowing themselves to see the abyss. We've also got Bob texting in, haha, calm down, boys, before punches. I can assure you they're more grown up than that. We've also had one of the best discussions ever on talkTV. Bottom line is Farage is speaking and giving the people what they want. Great show. That's from Bill in Thailand, interestingly. Bill, I think you might need to get back over here so you can vote in the next election. And then Gary, how will Farage get his policies through the House of Lords? A question I think many people are going to ask as the election gets nearer and nearer. But look, Peter, first of all, the government is obviously challenging the hotel decision because ultimately they haven't thought of the contingency plan, have they?
Oh, the idea of competency being anywhere near number 10 right now is just a fantasy. But the one thing I keep making this point to people is that this was always going to be challenged. And everyone's so shocked that the government is challenging it. Well, they didn't have a choice because, like we say, they don't have a contingency. Dan Jarvis was interviewed yesterday, and I mean, a rabbit in the headlights is a very kind way of putting what we want. That's a very polite way of putting it. But it shows yet again that this is a government reacting. It doesn't have a plan. It never did. Why that was never really pushed harder in the general election has always baffled me, particularly from the press's point of view. But I will say that the problem, and I said this when this first started in Epping, is that if they closed that hotel, this was policy collapse. Because it was kind of the lightning rod. This was one hotel and it has now spread. And unfortunately, the government is without a clue. And how they will push forward, as we were just saying, that we've got to have to hope that they've got these new centres going. But the amount that they're going to have to build and kind of renovate to get going is nowhere near ready. Which is one of the reasons I think that they're really hoping to kind of drag out a legal case. But honestly, I do not know what they're going to do.
Gwaine, how do you feel, Gwaine? Especially when we find out Yvette Cooper's busy with what it seems like a late gap year interraining around Europe with their boards.
I don't begrudge politicians' holidays. I don't. I think it's ridiculous. And we become totally sanctimonious about this. I mean, if she's going to try and run this thing, she's allowed some time off, otherwise she will break.
But is this the right time, Gwaine, with all this going on?
Should she take a holiday in term time?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, people are allowed to take a break, otherwise they will break. We want them to do the best job they can possibly do. If we force them to work every single day during the holidays, guess what? They won't. So I don't join in with that sort of... Completely. Every year we have it, something goes wrong. Oh, well, he's with his family in the Costa Brava. Well, you know what? That's called being human. So I've got no problem with that. However, what you have is a government that says its policy is to empty the hotels, to close the hotels. A hotel is closed and they spend, and I think I might FOI this, how much have you spent on this defence?
Yes.
How much is the government spending on expensive silks, expensive lawyers, to defend and to attack something that's happening that actually is their policy? And Peter is right. The reason is they need to stretch it out. Because once they're kicked out of these hotels, and I hope they will be, and there are hundreds up and down the country. What's that, 32,000 people? 32,000 people. Well,
8% up, despite being told that hotel numbers were coming down.
Once they've done that, what happens next? They put them in HMOs. Don't tell me that the people of this country won't work out where those HMOs are, and then you have the protest at a lower level, a more granular level. They need to slow this down, because people might laugh about, and the article on various people attacking Farage and this idea of using RF baits, and there's unexplained ordnance at RF bases. Actually, I think that's a pushing it a bit.
Yeah, even for me, that's fine.
They do need work, but the Nightingale hotels could be, if they say, right, we see this truck coming down this road. It ain't got no driver because we're supposed to be driving it. We don't know what we're doing. We need to build these things now, so they're trying to delay it for that. However, I mean, as I say, you attack Farage for this Nightingale prison concept, the Nightingale concept, you can do it. That requires, from Labour, a moral paradigm shift that I do not think they have the intelligence, the wit, the heart, or the soul to manage.
Not even Mike Tapp, Gawain. He's always doing his videos, Mike Tapp, calling Farage a plastic patriot, saying that he's standing up for Dover and Deal. I always enjoy the video of him out on the sea and then looking at maps on the hood of a car.
Every day Mike Tapp looks at Nowcast or an MRP poll. He sits there with his Alpen, probably with sliced, I don't know, goji berries.
No, it's far too expensive.
Goji berries. And there's a picture of a fry-up in front of it, so if somebody photographs and he's got a fry-up in front of him and he's eating his goji berries, and he just looks at those polls and thinks, how do I piss off my own my public now? How do I really annoy the people in Dover? Because he knows he's a one-term MP. He knows. Look at, I think, in the Kent County Council elections last year, Reform won every single ward in his constituency. Yes. He's not just looking down the barrel of a gun. He's looking back down the barrel of a comedy howitzer that will fire him to France.
Yeah.
And so therefore he comes up with these absurd.
At least he'll be able to get back over though on a small boat.
Yeah, that's very true.
Probably. but the point is, people like Mike, he's personable enough, but he just. Nobody believes him. It's like accusing Farage of being in league with Jimmy Savile. Nobody believes it.
Still the most ridiculous
stuff I've heard. Nobody believes it. Yesterday, was it yesterday or the day before, in the Telegraph, Nigel Farage is the new Oswald Mosley. Come off it, mate.
Yeah.
These
it's
insults.
Tiresome, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just, and all it does is ordinary people, reasonable people up and down the country, look at that and say, you are obviously. Your cupboard is bare. You have nothing. So all you're left is making child room insults. And you know what? They wash off Farage. He just pours off him like water off a duck's back, and he stands there, and everybody goes, "Well, they're being ridiculous." He's not like that.
And also,
we got about when it left, so I'll leave you, Peter, to say some words.
It really annoys me as well, because there are legitimate criticisms you could throw at reform. There's real debate to be had, and that's the childish nonsense you're going down.
No.
It doesn't do our politics any good. And
it's like the Democrats and weird attacks on Trump.
Exactly.
All this stuff didn't work on Donald Trump.
It
won't work on Nigel Farage.
That's all they've got. They don't know how to debate anymore.
Well, I'll just say here, Sean from Gloucester's texted in, great head-to-head with these two, but Peter needs to be a bit more consistent.
No.
I like him a lot, but he's trying to get cheap points with some of his criticisms of reform. Quick reply to Sean?
I'm anything but cheap, darling.
I love it. Well, look, thank you so much to Gawain Towner, now party board member of Reform UK, former Director of Communications for Reform UK too, and Mr. Peter Barnes, political strategist, for joining me in the studio in a very passionate but well-conducted head-to-head. Blimey, what a great time we've had, and make sure you keep tuning in so you can hear more. 0344 499 1000. Tell us what you think. 87222 with the word talk at the start of your message, and follow and message us on talk at talkTV on X. We'll see you after the break.
We've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah, okay. Rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed at the bottom of the bed on the sheet,
Yeah.
and it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I can think to I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its two front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson had been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich, don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive-bombed by our version of the magpie.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, Great Britain. Jonathan Gullis sitting in for the amazing Alex Phillips here on the Weekend Breakfast Show on the home of common sense. That is Talk. 0344 499 1000 to text in your messages via WhatsApp, or indeed send us a voice note to and call. But you can also text through normal SMS messages to 87222 with the word Talk at the start of your message, and follow us on X at talkTV. So much to cover. Nigel Farage's big deportation bill, obviously in the papers today. Lucy Connolly, political prisoner, yes or no? And of course, migrant hotels, government challenging that ruling on the Bell Hotel in Epping. Do you agree with the government? Do we need to keep using hotels, yes or no? Well, I'm delighted to be joined by Whitehall correspondent for The Sun, Sophia Slay, who's going to be taking us through some of the stories inside The Sun, albeit, Sophia, we'll go to one story in one of our sister papers here at News UK, which is The Times, where they got that big interview with Nigel Farage. I'm sure you'll be following that up in The Sun over the weekend, where he's announced now the detail of a Reform UK's deportation plan for illegal migrants. And what a plan it is, quite bold, quite punchy. A lot of people questioning, is this actually doable? 5 deportation flights a day, some might say that's quite fanciful. Scrapping lots of legislation such as the Refugee Convention, Human Rights Act, ECHR. How will you overcome the legal challenges? I mean, what are Sun readers going to think of this? Do you think they'll be happy to hear someone saying they're willing to do some quite bold stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think there certainly will be music to plenty of readers' ears. There's a lot of frustration out there. I think there's a lot of frustration with the current government, the Labour government. The perception is that they're failing to curb this problem. And, you know, I was saying to you just in the break, there's frustration with the Tories. They're not getting a hearing on this. They're not getting a look in, because I think the public think that they failed during their time in government.
Part of the problem, really. Labour would say they inherited the problem left by the last Conservative government.
Exactly that, exactly that. So I think a lot of the public are now going to say, you know, we've tried the Tories, we're trying Labour, they're failing, so perhaps we need to try something else. And I think this big announcement, which I think is Tuesday, you know what a Reform press conference is like. It's got the pyrotechnics, the fireworks, usually some sort of like crazy rap music or something, and loads of cameras. They love the press to descend. So it probably will be a very big moment on Tuesday, and they'll encourage all the press to come. And you know, he sort of loves those kind of camera moments, the Q&A, a bit like Donald Trump, right? There'll be sort of those kind of moments. It'll be sort of bombastic. So I think it will be. Without other things happening, I think it will be one of the biggest stories of this week. And I sort of, you know, I was in bed last night, sort of, I think it was maybe 5 to 11 or 5 to midnight. I sort of got the messages flash up, sort of Tories CCHQ sort of replying to this, trying to knock it down. And I think there are some valid criticisms. There's lots of interesting, very bolshy, very contentious stuff in this plan. But I think some of it you might be familiar with as well, because there's things like doing deals, sending people to Ascension Island. Do you remember that one?
Yes, I do remember
And
that
I think
one.
there will be question marks, and I think they will face scrutiny on this now, because people are taking taking them seriously about how much is this really going to cost. A lot of these ideas have been talked about quite a few times in the past.
And the problem is raising expectations, and then if reform were to come to government and didn't deliver, what does that mean for politics and democracy overall? Nigel Farage has always said, if I don't succeed, if I fail, then imagine what's sitting on the far right in this country that could then, God forbid, come in and really go further than anyone could ever dare. He always says he's been the guardian of the extremism on the right of British politics, and I think that, as you say, it's interesting. I think reform get quite a tough time over their policies, and rightly so, but it's amazing that when the Conservative deportation bill came out, it kind of landed flatly, but the Greens and Lib Dems don't kind of get anywhere near the same scrutiny. Yet again, the Lib Dems could potentially partner Labour in a coalition of some kind after the next election if polls are to be believed that Labour may still be largest party and require Lib Dems to get them to a working majority for a coalition agreement. And so I think actually reform are, you know, I would say they're coming up with the details sooner than they have to. There's a risk obviously others will then steal their ideas, but I think Nigel Farage is baked into the fact that he's Nigel Farage and people will know this is him, this is authentic, and if Labour and Conservative copy it, people are going to go, you're only doing this because of Nigel Farage, right?
I think there's an element of that. I mean, you know, Nigel Farage is a huge personality and he's one of the most successful I know he's only just become an MP, but he's actually one of the most successful politicians, certainly of sort of my time. And I think just going back to sort of point about sort of Lib Dems and the Greens and things like that, you're so right that we could end up with a scenario where it is sort of a Lib-Lab coalition, given the way the polls are going and how tricky things are looking for Labour. And maybe the reason the Lib Dems haven't been getting much scrutiny on the big issue like asylum hotels, deportation and things like that is because I don't really think they have much of a policy on it. They seem to be quite interested in not so much the domestic agenda and sort of what is necessarily affecting the man and woman on the street and what they're angry or upset about. They seem to be quite concerned about other issues like Gaza and Donald Trump and things like that.
All the stuff that, you know, really no one cares about because they want to focus more on what's going on at home. Well, we're going to delve into the Sun now. Obviously, the front page is all about Lucy Connolly. We've talked about that earlier. I want to get to some of the stories on the inside. If we go to page 2, we see a story from your colleague Martina Bett saying £350 million cheats crackdown, no child benefit if you're living abroad. It says here tens of thousands of cheats who carried on claiming child benefit after moving abroad will be stripped of the handout in clampdown. I mean, this is quite shocking, isn't it?
I don't think many people will be chuffed to read this, because actually, to be honest, I didn't realise the extent that people living abroad were claiming child benefit
Same here.
I was quite shocked to even, you know, I never really thought of it, to be perfectly honest with you. So I am a bit, you know, I think many readers will be quite annoyed to hear that this is happening. Fundamentally, this is a good thing that the government is sort of, you know, beefing up this sort of hit squad that go and sort of hunt these people down and get the money back. On the flip side, 350 million. It's not that much money nowadays, is it? Especially when you think about, you know, one of sort of the big sort of Labour controversies in recent months was their big welfare U-turn that has left them with, you know, a multi-billion, a multi-billion black hole. I think it was, about 5 billion.
Well, like you say, 5 billion for that, 50 billion we're expecting overall if they want to retain their headroom.
Exactly, with other, you know, and that was, you know, other U-turns like winter fuel, wasn't it? That was all these different things sort of playing into this massive black hole. So although fundamentally this is a good thing, and I think readers will be pleased to hear, I think we must look at it in the larger context that there is a massive black hole to be filled, and this is a drop in the ocean.
The Sun has discovered that a pilot scheme nailed 2,600 claimants who had left the UK but were still pocketing the cash, and just 15 investigators managed to block £17 million in dodgy payouts in less than a year. The pilot by the Public Sector Fraud Authority, the Home Office and HMRC matched a sample of 200,000 child benefit records with digital travel data under the Digital Economy Act. All suspicious cases were checked before any payouts were axed. The squad is now being increased to more than 200 staff from next month. So interesting to see what the government is able to do there. And like you say, welcome. We then go to page 5, where is Lucy Connolly all over it, but tied in there is a story which is the PM is to fight on with keeping hotels open whilst Yvette Cooper is busy interrailing around Europe. I mean, this legal injunction again from the High Court, this just a spanner in the works, and this is a gift, right, to Labour's opposition. And I suppose many Sun readers will be asking, We had an emergency cabinet meeting over recognising Palestine as a state, but we have yet to have an emergency cabinet meeting about record numbers of small boat crossings, the fact that we've had 111,000 asylum claims since Labour took office, and now the fact that hotels are being shut and no one really knows in government where on earth they're going to put them.
I mean, yeah, I have heard that sort of argument actually from Reform, you know, saying that we should recall Parliament to discuss this issue. This is a crisis. Hundreds of men crossing the Channel every day, putting them up in a hotel is about £120 per person per night. That is a lot of money. I think it's about six million a day that the taxpayer is hemorrhaging. And that really cuts through with the public. There's a lot of fury about this. The one part of this story, and it's just actually one line in this story that I was really interested in and thought was fascinating, was there's a Labour MP, his name is Steve Yem, he's Mansfield, I think.
Yes.
And he has written in sort of, I think for the sort of local media online, he has suggested and sort of called for the PM to kind of copy the Trump administration, the Trump crackdown on immigration. And I thought this might make you laugh.
You can't make it up, can you? You can't make it up.
This is a Labour MP, remember? Essentially sort of consider sort of Rwanda-style deportation, say it quietly. I know.
I could have told you. I could have told you, Labour. I would bang my head on this desk if it didn't give me a headache, because honestly, how many times did you have to be told we weren't doing Rwanda for the fun of it, we were doing it to try and stop small boat migrants? And the fact we've got Graham Stringer in the same week saying we should leave the ECHR. I mean, talk about the Overton window shifting. Reform's just owning the agenda, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah, and I think this really shows how the agenda has shifted, and also how it is really easy to be in opposition. You know, Labour spent a long time in opposition. It's really easy to do that job, and suddenly to be in government and be the party of power and maybe have won your seat on a very slim margin and have the concerns that your constituents had, the worries, the anger, the frustration, that sense of unfairness. A, they're worrying about their own seats, but B, they're also getting it in the neck from their own constituents as well. So it's amazing how the narrative has... I mean, you know, a few years ago when you were an MP, did you ever hear Labour MPs backing Rwanda?
It was disgusting, it was immoral, it's not a safe country, it would mean we're putting people's lives at risk. I mean, I just heard every single one of those arguments made, and now lo and behold, as I say, I see it. And actually my anger still rages at the Conservative Party mostly because, as I say, as you pointed out, this deportation bill, you know, Robert Jenrick resigned from government, and then I worked with Robert Jenrick, Danny Kruger, Miriam Cates, Simon as well, who was in Middlesbrough, up in Middlesbrough, and Sir Bill Cash, to put down amendments to the Safety of Rwanda Act, as it then became, to try and get the government to carve out bits of the Human Rights Act, to ignore ECHR pyjama injunctions, so we could get flights off the ground and demonstrate that we could deliver. And lo and behold, some of those MPs, most of them actually, probably about 80% of the Conservative MPs that still exist, all said no, walked through the no lobbies to vote us down alongside Labour. We were called fascists, we were called, you know, we were a problem. I remember getting WhatsApp messages saying, oh, if you weren't talking about the issue so much, it wouldn't be an issue. And now, lo and behold, they have the audacity to stand up and pretend that, like, they care about this issue. I'm a Conservative Party member and former Conservative MP. I find it hard to believe the Conservative Party will do half the stuff they say. And now I certainly don't believe Labour, who voted against all this at every opportunity. I know Sir Keir Starmer loves a U-turn, but what hell of a U-turn it will be if they started talking about a Rwanda-style scheme, albeit I suspect they'll have to find a different country other than Rwanda for it to be believed. But their MPs ran on their manifesto, they made their bed. Places like Mansfield, Steve Yam, was it? I'm sure he can see the writing on the wall. He's just had his county council elections. He knows what's coming, and I just don't think in those type of communities, and like the ones I live in, the reform train ain't stopping. It's going to come through hard and fast in those red wall areas, and no matter what a Labour MP says to try and make themselves carve out different from their leaders, the voter won't remember it. They'll just remember Sir Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves and Yvette Cooper, and they'll be tarnished for it, whether they were on the right side of history or not overall. And I say that from lived experience. It's just absolutely crazy. We've had a text in, by the way, from Robert in Cheshire, who says, Sophie is an excellent correspondent. Great to see her on talk. Reform has at least come up with some workable ideas for deportation. I hope it comes to fruition ASAP to save Britain. So thank you, Rob. I know Sophie would appreciate that. I think it's easy to bash journalists. They work damn hard to get these stories. Remember, their job is to find out what politicians like me were trying to say or not say, and what we're saying in public and what we're saying in private, to expose some of those things. I like to think I was at least consistent. I mean, we've also got the Lucy Connolly, obviously, story splashing on the front page. She's obviously saying that she considers herself a political prisoner. I mean, this will. I mean, you've got on there page 5 again the photo of the Labour councillor Ricky Jones, who was obviously found not guilty by a jury of his peers. To stress that, he said, but obviously did say we need to cut all their throats and get rid of them all. Lucy Connolly would say, I did a tweet, was disgusting, was wrong, I deleted it, I apologised for it, I got 31 months in prison. Others will say, well, you did plead guilty, so at the end of the day, you must have known you did something wrong. I mean, will some readers probably fall on Lucy's side of this, feeling that she's been harshly treated? I think that's what the problem is here. It's not the action, it's the reaction to what she did that will upset people. At a time when 1,700 people were being released from prison with previous offences, and of course, obviously, the idea of two-tier care raging very much from this, right?
I don't think anyone sort of thinks what she said was okay, but like you say, it's all about the perception. I mean, something that frustrates me personally is I know people that have been the victims of serious violence, and I'm talking broken bones, and the perpetrators have received a suspended sentence, not been put behind bars. That was not hurty words. That was not something tweeted or wrote on Facebook or anything like that. That is physical violence, and they have got a suspended sentence, and that's where I get quite frustrated. I don't think what she said was okay. I don't think what the Labour councillor said was okay. I don't think any of it was okay. But I think I would much rather see people that really physically hurt others and break bones. I'd like to see them behind bars, to be totally frank with you.
Sophia Slay, I think she speaks for the country. Maybe one day she'll be on those green benches, leave the comfort of the lobby and come onto Parliament instead. Thank you so much, Sophia Slay, Whitehall correspondent for The Sun, for sharing us those good stories inside. We'll be going to a short break and we'll be hearing from you. Tell us what you think about life under two-tier care. Do you think Nigel Farage has the right ideas for us when it comes to tackling illegal migration? And after the break, we're going to continue the Bell Hotel in Epping, because we're going to be speaking with Reform councillor Jay McIver and human rights lawyer Shahab Khan, and I think they're going to have very different perspectives on what should be happening with the Bell Hotel, and blimey, do I look forward to hearing them. I'll see you shortly.
Ricky Jones did, standing in a crowd of people at a protest, saying those protesters over there need to have their throats cut and get every single one of them.
And he also said it in front of a camera.
Yes, in front of a camera. He's an elected official.
Much larger, you know.
Absolutely. And he was released on bail, eventually had the expert advice of a very experienced criminal lawyer, a KC, whereas Lucy only had a duty solicitor and was very badly advised.
Yeah.
And then once Lucy was sentenced, in the sentencing remarks, the judge referenced diversity and inclusion. So there wasn't just a legal assessment of her tweet, there was a political one, in my opinion.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Jonathan Gullis, sitting in for the amazing Alex Phillips on The Breakfast Show this weekend. Delighted now to be going to our next guest. We've got Councillor Jay McIver, Reform UK's first ever Essex councillor, who's been leading the way with his colleagues and even his mother on the front line in Epping against the Bell Hotel. And down the line is joining us Shoaib Khan, a human rights lawyer. Hello, Shoaib, how are you?
Hi, I'm okay, thanks.
First of all, Shoaib, obviously I'll come to you first. People like Jamie have been putting pressure on the government. They took the government essentially to court. They managed to successfully have this hotel, the Bell Hotel in Epping, well, basically vacated in the future for having illegal migrants due to an infringement on the planning licence that was on the site. Isn't this a victory for common sense? People are sick to death, right, of these hotels?
Yeah, I'm quite a lot to say there, obviously. I'm not sure about, common sense. But the point is, I mean, just to start with, obviously, I'm no fan of keeping asylum seekers in hotels. I think it's shameful, disgraceful. Ever since, the Tories started doing this a few years ago, I think so many of us have been opposing it. That just makes no sense. We want these people to integrate. We want those people to be part of the community. A few years later, we're going to say, why don't they speak English? Why can't they work? Why aren't they a part of British community? Why are they living in ghettos? But that's what we do. They come here, then we lock them up in random places where they can't leave, they can't work, they can't study.
Shoaib, sorry, can I just check something?
And so that's the first thing is, I'm not supportive of hotel accommodation anyway.
But Shoaib, are you saying that you support everyone who's coming across on the small boat should just be granted indefinite leave to remain?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I don't think the immigration status that we give them makes a huge difference. I mean, I don't.
So you'd allow people to work. You'd allow illegal migrants who've crossed the channel to enter the workforce.
No, I don't know why are we saying illegal immigrants? That's the point.
Well, they've broken the law, Shoaib. They've entered the country illegally. They've broken the law.
If we give them the status, if we allow them to work, then yeah, they're no longer illegal. We're the ones who are pushing them to remain illegal. So the point is, so that's what I'm saying. So I'm no fan of hotels anyway. But in this case, I mean, I just don't understand, and especially people who are celebrating this victory now, I don't understand. Those are the same ones who have been, for decades criticizing judges for granting injunctions. Why are you interfering with asylum policy? The government knows how much money it has. The government knows best. Why are random judges individually sitting there, adjudicating on such decisions? So I just don't understand, what are we celebrating now? An unelected judge interfering in parliamentary democracy.
Well, let me go, Shoaib, to then Jamie. Jamie, why are you celebrating? Shoaib says you just shouldn't have a right to celebrate.
Well, first of all credit to the mums of Epping. I'm taking no credit for this. This is the mums of Epping that peacefully protested, that frankly have been labelled all sorts of nonsense by people on the left. These are mums, they love their country, but they love their kids far more, and they're worried about their children and their safety, and that's why people are protesting across this weekend and why they've been doing it peacefully in Epping. To answer your point, first of all, government policy, by the way, is to remove people from hotels. But I take big issue with what the previous guest has just said, because how on earth can you suggest they're living in ghettos? I can show you a ghetto. A ghetto is where homeless British veterans get put when they're found on the streets. They're horrendous HMOs that local authorities put them into, or hostels, where actually many people who've had drug addictions and things end up wanting to check out of those places and prefer to be homeless, because the British state puts British people second and illegal migrants first. The hotels like the Bell Hotel are in no way squalor, and they are in no way ghettos. In fact, there was actually just yesterday a Daily Mail article showing plenty of Selfridges bags in one of these illegal migrant hotel rooms. And also, they are not asylum seekers. Can we stop calling them asylum seekers? It is insulting to people that legitimately apply to come to Britain. An asylum seeker is somebody that goes from a dangerous country to a safe country. They are asylum seekers when they cross borders and enter places like Turkey, Greece. They are asylum seekers there. They are not asylum seekers when they travel across Europe, doing, frankly, a tour of Europe, and they get to many safe countries. They actually stay overnight in many safe countries, and then they pay people smugglers to get on a boat and come here illegally. So let's not insult people that enter the country through legal routes by calling these people asylum seekers. They are illegal migrants.
Shoaib, wouldn't you accept the fact that with this particular hotel, the Bell Hotel Epping, the protest started because two individuals individuals have so far been charged with very serious sexual offences, both of which they deny, and obviously will have to face their time in court. Obviously, Baroness Casey, in her audit of grooming gangs, said more and more illegal migrants are showing up in grooming gang cases. We know, obviously, of other hotels where people are being investigated for other criminal activities. Don't you accept that these hotels are a hotspot for criminality, are they not?
No, I mean, the first thing is, like I said, I mean, I'm not opposing the use of hotels. I'm just saying what exactly I was celebrating. The point is now, I mean, like Jamie just said, now if we start putting them in HMOs or hostels, are the mums of Epping going to be fine with that? An HMO right next door? Is that what we're saying? Rather than having 100 of them in one building where we know where they are. They'll be spread around Epping and other towns now. Is that what we're saying?
No, we want them detained and deported. And we want them to be treated like illegal migrants. They've broken the law. They should be treated as law breakers, and they should be deported back to the countries they've come from. And this argument that we can't deport people to certain dangerous countries is ridiculous. There are plenty of people that enter the country illegally from countries like Nigeria, Ethiopia, where we do have diplomatic relations, and people can be sent back.
Sharib?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not sure how, you know, so again, are we saying that the hotel and the type of accommodation was completely irrelevant then? If what we're saying is basically they should not be housed anywhere, then I'm not sure why
they shouldn't be housed next to children that go to a school. They shouldn't be housed next to secondary schools. That's the point in Epping, for example. The hotel is next to a school, and allegedly one of those students has been sexually assaulted by somebody staying at the hotel whose address was on their court papers. Now, we need to let that trial do its thing, but the point of the matter is there are many other anecdotal experiences of people that live in Epping. Women don't walk their dogs anymore. Fathers have to now not go to work in the morning and will be driving their children to school rather than letting them walk. The British people shouldn't be having to be put through this. I was actually myself on the way back from a protest. The peaceful protest took place, went and got a bit of dinner. I walked back to where my car was parked, and I walked through the forest that many girls have said they're too scared to walk through now. And there I was confronted by two people who are resident of the hotel. Now, granted, they walked past me no problem, but for a split second I thought, I don't know who these people are. Nobody knows who they are, these people that are coming to the country illegally and being put in these hotels. So we've got to be upfront about this. We know from the data, there is a danger to British citizens from the people that are entering the country illegally, and you should therefore not be dumping them in hotels next to schools.
Sharif, obviously you've said that you two are against use of hotels. You've said that obviously HMOs won't be desirable for the public either. So where do you think we should put them? What would you do?
Well, like we've done with the Ukrainian asylum seekers, like we do with others. I mean, you know, the asylum seekers that we like, just in the community. I mean, let's just start accommodating them. Let's allow them to, like all of us do, we live a normal life. We're not you know, how many of us are a burden on the government? That's the whole point. Allow them to work. Allow the, you know, if they speak English, they'll get a, you know, better job. If they don't, they'll get a job according to their skills, their abilities. So that's what like all of us do.
Sharif, can I just, interject quickly? Because you said they're like the Ukraine scheme, okay? Are you suggesting we have a scheme where people voluntarily open up their homes to allow their spare bedrooms to be used? The difference between the Ukraine scheme and the illegal migrants is Ukrainians weren't burning or throwing their documents overboard to sink into the bottom of the English Channel to avoid us knowing who they are, where they've come from, were they? Ukrainians told us who they were. They provided documentation, so we know where they're from, we know who they are, we know who their family relatives are.
And that's the thing, because for the first time, I don't know, in decades, we actually sent flights there and we processed people from the, you know, the war zones and brought them over. And like Jamie's just saying, you know, that's what we should, you know, people who apply legally. What's people who should apply legally? In Afghanistan right now, Iraq, Gaza, any other country right now, even those that we accept to be war zones, how does someone come legally to the UK as an asylum seeker?
How do we pay for
We
these
have no
people?
legal routes. So the point is, like he's saying, is that what we're saying? Turkey should take. Turkey does already take 10 times, 100 times more asylum seekers than us. Pakistan takes how many? Half. But
also, Shah, we're saying, how many of Pakistan be sending back into Afghanistan? Pakistan are kicking people back in to Afghanistan.
And obviously that's disgusting, and no one's...
Why is that disgusting? Why is it disgusting?
How is it disgusting?
That's Pakistan's right to control their borders.
No, but these are people who've come to the country, settled, they had children, going to school, earning a living, and now suddenly just because the locals think, oh, we don't like these Afghan faces, let's send them back. I think that's disgusting. Those people, it's not as if they're saying if you've been here, you know, longer than 1 year, then you're welcome to stay. People 10, 20, 30 years. The people now being deported were born in Pakistan. And that's horrible that they're being deported to Afghanistan. What about the girls? And all the time we're sitting here criticizing the Taliban, oh, they're so awful to women and girls, which they are. But then we're happy to send young girls
But
back.
show him, we wouldn't mind women and girls from Afghanistan if women and girls were coming over. We've got over 80%, I think, on recent figures were fighting-age men coming over.
This is the hypocrisy.
Because if they're going to, like Jamie's saying, if they have to travel half the world and cross so many borders, it's going to be the men. If we
that's
send
nonsense.
planes
Come
there,
on.
like we did with
What father would leave their daughter in a country that they thought was so fearful that their daughter could be raped or their daughter could be killed? I wouldn't leave my daughter in a country that was like that. I'd take her with me.
But why didn't that happen in Ukraine? Because we actually sent flights there and we took...
Because the men stay and fight for their country rather than flee it.
The men are fighting for Ukraine, and at the same time, Ukraine was literally invaded by Russia.
And this is, I must highlight, this is the stark hypocrisy, I'm afraid, of people on the left of British politics at the moment. You worry about women and girls and their safety in Afghanistan, yet nobody wants to talk about women and girls' safety in the Gaza Strip under Hamas, and people walking around the streets of London calling for a Palestine state to be run by Hamas authorities. This is the hypocrisy, I'm afraid, of the left. They only want to talk about women's safety, only want to talk about women's safety when it suits them. There is women's safety in Britain. There is women's safety issues in Essex, in the town that I live in. Start worrying about our own citizens, British young girls. There has been the wholesale rape of British young girls in our country under the watch of the previous government, and this government has started to basically act in denial of the whole situation. And we know that there is a correlation between illegal migration and victims of those crimes. Now, and there is absolutely no way I am interested in the safety of women and girls in foreign countries when the British state's responsibility is to British citizens. We need to put our own citizens first. And you know what? I feel for victims, young girls out there. I feel for them because no one is standing up for them. No one is standing up for them in government at the moment. It's everybody's too worried about what's happening abroad. We need to look at our own home.
Sharif, I'll let you have the last word.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't understand, how the hotels are not hotels, because the point is, and like Jamie's saying, and as we see now, the whole point is we don't want asylum seekers. We only want people we like, and that's the thing. But that, I mean,
I don't want anyone to come over illegally, Sharif.
How would we ever take any asylum seekers then, according to this, unless France is invaded and the French come over?
Because we've got no space.
Because otherwise we would never take anyone in if, they have to come from our neighbouring country. And obviously that's ridiculous. So many other countries taking millions of asylum seekers, literally. We've taken a few 100,000. I mean, and we're talking, like we're saying, the Ukrainians, we're talking 200,000-300,000. If someone else suggested, can we accommodate another 200,000, everyone would have been up in arms. But we did do that, and no one's had any problem.
You can't get a doctor's appointment, you can't get your kid into your preferred school. There is no room in this country. Our population is growing out of control. We need to stop it.
So are you saying those Ukrainians should be deported and we should have taken them?
Because the Ukrainians, Sharif, before I let you go quickly, Sharif, the Ukrainians plan to return. The idea is they want to return to their own country. Some have already returned. The idea was it was a temporary scheme to provide women and children safety in this country from war.
No, is that what we're saying, that we should deport them or we shouldn't have taken them in? If anyone does, I think that's a disgusting point of view.
I've not said that. I've not said that.
I've said people from Ukraine, women and children overwhelmingly, had every right to come to this country to be protected whilst Ukraine was fighting its war. But I also respected the scheme which they signed up to, the Ukrainian people, knew it was temporary, because guess what? They want to go back to Ukraine. They want to go back to their sovereign country.
The country's on the same continent as us. The people of Ukraine have a very similar, because their culture is very similar to ours.
Exactly.
They're a Western democracy.
Exactly my point. We only want asylum seekers that look like us walking
It's
down
nothing
the
to
street.
do with how they look. This is the problem.
You just said
I didn't say their country is similar to ours.
Jamie
they
said
are on the same continent as us.
Yes,
they are a
and
Western democracy. They are
walking
compatible.
in a forest. You saw two men, they did nothing, but somehow you're talking about it on TV saying, well, I was afraid they might do something to me. How does any of that make any sense?
I said I understand how young women feel and women in Epping feel when they are confronted by two men who are not locals. They're not locals, because normally it'd be locals walking their dog.
Europe is ethnically diverse. I don't give a damn what colour someone is. What I want to do is adapt to living in this country and abide by the rules and the laws of this country and have attitudes and behaviour towards people in this country, whether that be a man, a woman or a child, that is fitting within our rules and our laws. And sadly, there are people coming over. There are people coming over with some very medieval attitudes towards women and girls in particular. Women that are second-class citizens, children that could be married off as young as 10 years old. There is no denying that there are some of those attitudes coming into this country. And that is abhorrently incorrect and wrong. There are many people who have come from all parts of the world who have adapted to fitting in with British culture and British identity. And I applaud those people because they would expect us to do the same if we were in their country. I would expect to do the same if I was in their country too.
Them and lock them up for the first 2 years. That's what we're saying. If we lock them up for the first 2 years, then
those people come over legally. That's the difference. Those people choose to come here legally and get their visa in advance, and don't just rock up and claim asylum.
People that have entered the country
for asylum seekers.
People that have entered the country legally from other countries and are contributing to Britain have gone through the legal routes. You know, they are the biggest campaigners right now for a Reform UK government. I speak to them all the time because they can see the stark unfairness of how their parents and grandparents were treated when they arrived to this country, how hard they had to work, and now people are getting everything on a plate because we're soft-touch Britain. We have to get tough.
So, Sharif, I'm really sorry because of the break. I've got to go, but thank you for contributing. I really do appreciate it. Sharif Khan there, human rights lawyer. Very quickly with Councillor Jamie McIver, obviously we've had that big exclusive in the Times today. Nigel Farage laying out, some would say finally, Reform's plan for mass deportations. Jamie, very quick reaction from you. How do you respond? Is this alone the golden ticket to Nigel Farage entering 10 Downing Street in 30 seconds?
I think Nigel Farage has already got the golden ticket to enter number 10 Downing Street, but what this does is give him a huge gust of wind behind him to make sure he sails into number 10 Downing Street at speed, because what this is what the British people want, a government that is going to control its borders. We're going to arrest people, we're going to detain people, and we're going to deport people that enter the country illegally. We are not going to use excuses that previous governments have, that we can't deal with this country or that country. We're going to put the British people first.
Thank you so much, Councillor Jamie McIver, Essex's first ever Reform UK councillor. Delighted to have him on the show. And text coming in from Rich. This Jamie McIver is spot on. First time applauded the telly. Well, well done to you, Jamie. We'll see you after the break, ladies and gents. We'll be joined by Martin Blackburn, sports reporter for The Sun, to go through all the latest sports stories. We'll see you shortly.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, everybody. Jonathan Gullis here, sitting in for the amazing Alex Phillips on the home of Common Sense. That is Talk. And blimey, the texts have been coming in. We've got here, great programme this morning, Jonathan. Switch to Reform UK and stand in Staffordshire Moorlands. We need a change for the better. That's from Neil. Thank you for that text. This is the first time I've ever watched Talk on a Saturday. Love it. That's from Bob. Thank you so much there. We've had Mick in Wallington. Carnival weekend, mass protests all over the country. Invasion by illegal migrants. Lucy Connolly freed and a crime epidemic. Where are the PM and Home Secretary on jolly days with heads in the sand? That's Mick in Wallington. Thank you so much. And we've got enjoying the show, and this is from John in Norfolk, Cromer, Norfolk. I was just up the road in Sheringham, John, not long ago with my family. Can I ask you and your guest a very direct question? Do you believe Lucy Connolly committed a crime with her social media post? A straight answer would be fantastic, as would like to know whether you consider her criminal or not. Thanks, guys. John in Chrome. Well, if you look at what she said, I think you can make the argument that it could have led to potentially inciting violence or at least inciting hatred. But do I think she needs to go to prison for it? No, absolutely not. I think a caution would have been absolutely fine. But I don't think it should have been a top priority when someone has apologised for the tweet, deleted it 4 hours after posting it. So I think that was a little bit of OTT when it came to handling that particular case. And we want to hear your views. 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK to 87222 and follow us on X at talkTV. And we have a voice note, which I'm delighted to say. Let's get and play that.
I think they should use old warehousing I mean, we keep making this assumption that we've got to give them something that's been used for housing before, that's got windows and doors. But actually, the government changed the law on that because they wanted to convert commercial properties into dwellings. So this natural sunlight law that they used to have for dwellings no longer exists. So they could potentially get old warehousing that's not anywhere near anybody, put a perimeter fence around it. With the height of the warehouse, you probably get about 6 floors in. You could get that in a day, like racking and put floors in. You have your portaloos, because there will be toilets in a warehouse. Warehouses have heating as well. So people think they're freezing cold. They're not. They have heat. They don't have air conditioning, but they do have heating. You should use warehouses, old warehouses.
Well, there's Elle with her view on the voice note. And thank you so much for sending that voice note in, because it's great to actually hear voices rather than me just reading things out. And look, I don't disagree. I think it's a good idea, as you say, to use old warehousing. There are plenty of industrial sites, many of whom sadly have been vacated over recent years after Labour put the bullet in the back of the head of British manufacturing, chasing their disastrous net zero agenda, along with the Conservative government that instigated that initially, which means that there will be plenty of space to use. And like you say, some of those spaces were indeed used when it came to making sure that we had people for the COVID vaccine in the past. So why not copy that same scheme again? So we have plenty that's going on there for us to be able to use. So fantastic ideas there. Another one coming in here. What a debate. Thank you, Talk. I've seen people putting flags up on lampposts last night. It put a smile on my face. That's another texter. And then Gary from Bolden. Deport to them all, or it will get worse. You have been texting. You have been talking. So we're now going to Martin Blackburn, who's going to be joining us on the line to talk about the Sun's big stories on the back pages. Let's go here now to Martin. Hello, Martin. Oh, sorry, we might just be experiencing a technical issue there. We will come back to that very shortly. Well, but we'll quickly go to what was going on which was obviously West Ham 1, Chelsea 5. Graham Potter under pressure as West Ham manager. If you've got the Sun newspaper, you'll see on the back page, gone to pot. This is after West Ham managed to end up losing the first game of the season 3-0 to Nottingham Forest. Then they've lost to Chelsea 5-1. I'm a Fulham fan, so I tell you what, I've got absolutely no time at all for Chelsea success. It makes me sick to the back of my stomach. I know that my great producer, Dean, is QPR fan. We've united QPR and Fulham, who would have believed it, in despising Chelsea and their success. But what a time for Graham Potter, and what a mess he is indeed in. And I quite think it's quite honest, isn't it, that we are in huge trouble here, that Graham Potter is going to potentially face a sacking. Lots of jokes about Sean Dyche waiting in the wings to take over, as he always does, to come and save the day. There needs to be clearly some serious investment in that West Ham squad. Let's see what they do in the final days of the transfer window. There's also another great story on the back. Hopefully the guys will be able to shove it up on screen. But there's one about Nuno, the manager of of Nottingham Forest, who came out with the incredible story of his huge fallout with the owner of Nottingham Forest Football Club. And I think we can now go again to Martin Blackburn, the political football correspondent, or sports reporter, for The Sun. Hello, Martin, how are you?
Good morning, guys. Yeah, not bad, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I was just saying there, Graham Potter's looking in a massive spot of bother, isn't he? 5-1 thumping last night, 3-0 thumping on the opening day of the season. Is he already on the clock to be sacked?
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to look that way, isn't it? Karen Brady was on talkSPORT last week, and she insisted that Potter's very much their man, and that they were going to stick with him. But that was a really bad result last night, and in a London derby as well. Their first home game of the season. I think the fans were a little bit sceptical about him anyway, and that's not really going to help. So big win for Chelsea, unfortunately for you, but yeah, difficult time for West Ham, and watch this space definitely.
And then quickly, final story, on the back of the front again, is that Nuno's relations with Marinakis not good after ruck with Edu. What on earth is going on here?
Yeah, that was a big surprise, really, that, because, Forest had this amazing season last season where they came so close to qualifying for the Champions League, got into Europe, and people were expecting them to sort of kick on. They won their first game against Brentford, and then this comes out of the blue yesterday, and Nuno said, his relations with the owners, with the director of football, it looks like, have broken down, and generally when this happens, it only ends one way.
Well, thank you so much to Martin Blackburn for showing us the views on the back of the Sun story there. We're going in now to another great story, though, which is going to be with Mr. James Wright. He is an Exmoor farmer, and we are going to be talking about, again, accused of a new betrayal, Sir Keir Starmer, of farmers over Labour's failure to deliver a manifesto pledge to back British-grown food. Hello, James. How are you?
Good morning.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and what a beautiful piece of countryside that is behind you there. I mean, James, I don't know how many more words or any more times farmers can hear other people say we're sorry for you. This is just another kick in the teeth, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, Labour promised not to introduce the family farm tax and to back British farmers with a British procurement guarantee. They'd make sure that all the government departments were buying British food. And turns out they haven't done anything working towards it. And only 2 departments are hitting the target. And DEFRA, which is the department responsible for this all, they can't even tell what progress has been done. So it's another broken promise.
Do you think farmers will ever be able to trust this Labour Party under Sir Keir Starmer ever again? Is it that serious now?
Yeah, I think the trust between the countryside and Labour is gone. And don't forget, in my rural community, you know, the farmers provide the majority of the jobs. The vets, the mechanics all rely on the farmers. So it's not just the farmers who are up in arms, who are suffering, it's all the other people as well. And if you're a new Labour MP and you were thinking that this might be a job for life in a rural constituency, you will be thinking twice. You probably get the yellow pages out and start looking.
Well, I was about to say, I think there's about 100, isn't there, Labour MPs representing what we call rural countryside constituencies, and their inbox must be pretty ugly. I mean, out of interest, you obviously are a farmer on the front line. The family farm tax is one of the biggest, I think, scandals going since this government's come into play. Can I just ask you, what impact are you seeing on the ground in your community with regards to this family farm tax? Are you seeing farms being put up for sale now? Are you seeing people leaving the industry? How serious is this as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is existential. I mean, farming has had a difficult couple of years, and this year with the drought in particular, it's really pushing people over the edge. And you're starting to see it already. They publish figures every quarter about the numbers of tractors sold, and we're at a 25-year low. Confidence is on the floor, and I visit lots of my neighbours, and they're all having the same conversations. How will we pay it? And if they can't pay it, you know, how quickly can we sell? Because what might happen is that the market really slows down and it becomes quite difficult to sell your farm. And that's why when Steve Reed, the City Steve, the farming minister, when he promised that they'd buy 50% of their food from British farms, everyone thought, well, that might be a little bit of sunshine. That would help sort of prop up farming incomes. And the fact there's been no progress is just mad, because, you know, this is something he keeps on repeating. You know, it's his defence against it all.
James, I find it really bizarre that the government finds it really hard to just basically tell the procurement officers, by the way, this is the rule, 50% has to come from here. Why does it have to be so difficult? Why do Labour make things so hard? I mean, I find it baffling and bemusing. Well, I remember having the same fight for Stoke-on-Trent with pottery, for example, making sure that all cups, saucers and plates within government departments are sourced from Stoke-on-Trent to make sure there's a nice boost for the local ceramics industry there. Same as you are saying 50% of food procured by the civil service should be coming from British farming. Why does this seem so difficult when it should be so simple?
Well, I mean, Labour promised not to put in the family farm tax. That was quite simple to avoid sort of breaking British farming. It appears they're not able to stick to the promises that they make, but I'm sure there is some government rule that means that they have to go with the lowest bidder, and imported food is produced at lower standards, it will be cheaper, and they're probably looking at the figures rather than thinking about what benefit can we give to the British economy, what benefit can we do to rural communities like mine. And yeah, it's spot on. You know, unfortunately, it's just another broken promise for the countryside.
I'll say this, James. I think there has to be a frank and honest conversation with the British people. I entered Parliament very much as a laissez-faire, kind of low-tax, small state, you know, free trader, as it were. Then you represent an area like I did in Stoke-on-Trent, and you see what free market's done. The free market and globalisation has meant manufacturing jobs going to China, going to India, because they are either using cheap or slave labour in China's case, or subsidising mass massively their energy, whilst we're putting more green levies on the manufacturing energy-intensive industry, making energy prices some of the highest in the world. With British farming, as you say, I'm very much now of the opinion that whether we have to spend a little bit more on our food shop, but we know that the food is coming from Britain, from British farmers, so that we are self-sustainable with as much of our meat, our veg and stuff as possible, should be a thing that we're willing to sacrifice. Because if anything from COVID, as a lesson should be, is that we shouldn't solely rely on the rest of the world. Like you say, where they are using lower standards, they will be using questionable methods, or indeed, you know, God forbid, with America with their hormone-injected beef and stuff like that. It's just a reality, but the supermarkets could then also play fair by making sure they pass more of the profit onto the farmer rather than racking up prices on the shelves to put more money in their pockets instead.
Well, look, food security is national security, and if a nation can't feed itself, it doesn't matter how big all your guns are if the population is starving at home. So there is a national imperative here. But I don't think farmers are asking for much. We're asking for a fair deal for food that is imported, that it is produced at the same standards of our own, follows the same rules that we all have to, and where our government has the ability to buy lots of food, which it does, to make sure they spend that money at home rather than abroad. I don't think that's asking for too much, and you know, Labour made a simple promise and they can't seem to fulfil it.
Well, thank you. That's James there. James Wright, Exmoor farmer, joining us today from that beautiful countryside scenery there, and well done to him for standing up yet again to another broken promise to British farmers by this Labour government. We're going to have a quick break. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk at the start of your message to 87222 and follow our messages on X at talkTV. We've got Peter Cardwell coming up shortly to take over from me. You won't want to miss that as we hand over and find out what he's going to be looking at. So make sure you tune in, and we look forward to seeing you shortly.
That the state describe Rudabakana as a boy with needs. That is astonishing and gives you such a clear insight into the woke, liberal, hand-wringing, pathetic and frankly dangerous thinking that pervades not only senior people in the prison system, but the sentencing council, the parole board, and many other aspects of public life today.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is the home of common sense with me, Jonathan Gullis, on Talk, sitting in for the amazing Alex Phillips here on Weekend Breakfast. And what a show we have had for you today. Interview after interview, opinion after opinion, some very spicy ones too that we thoroughly enjoyed. And you've been texting, calling and voice noting in. I want to thank you all for tuning in, as well as my amazing team behind the glass there who've been managing me. I'll be back with you, just so you know, tomorrow as well, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m, sitting in again for Alex. And a great last text. Cracking breakfast show today. Our articulate participants and very capable hosts. Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to make sure I leave myself with a little bit of flattery, but we go to our final guest. His name, our final guest, is Steve Denyer. He's one of our very own here, Virgin Radio presenter, and he's going to be talking to us about the brilliant Carfest. Hello, Steve, how are you?
Good morning, Jonathan. Welcome to Laverstoke Park Farm here in Hampshire. Just behind me is the UK's biggest family festival. The moment I get chatting to you, there's a wasp flying around my head. But anyway, I'll carry on. Welcome along. This is Chris Evans from Virgin Radio, who does a breakfast show every morning. This is his annual festival. It's been going since 2012. They've managed to raise over the years something incredible like £20 million for children's charity. So, you know, last year alone, 1.25 million was raised just by holding this event over the whole weekend. The way it works, if you look behind me, there's about 7 festivals all kind of sewn into one, and all the money raised goes to children's charities. You've got the kids area here, there's a spa fest, there's a wellness area. I'm hosting the Starfest stage, where we've got the likes of Rob Brydon and Lee Mack coming on later, and Cycling, one of the hairy bikers. And then on the main stage, I mean, last time we were treated to the likes of Bob Geldof rejoining with the Boomtown Rats and Travis on stage. Tonight, very much looking forward to Kim Wilde. Rita Ora is the headlining act later on tonight. So if there's anyone watching or listening who wants to come down, there's day passes still available, and you can get your ticket on the gate here, or you can go to carfest.org, and tickets are roughly about £100 for an adult, about £20 for a kid. So it's well worth coming down and joining us. It's so much fun.
And what initiated Chris to start this? What type of charities is he supporting with his amazing work?
It all started when he was doing his breakfast show for the BBC. So originally, most of the profits went to children in need, but now they're kind of separated into, they're all kind of children's charities. So cancer charities, leukemia charities, and it's a wonderful batch of charities, and so much money raised over the years. I think originally it was a Terry Wogan idea, and Chris thought, well, why don't we make it into a family festival? And originally they had one in the north, one in the south back in 2012. And a couple of years ago, we decided to do just one. But this year is the very final one here from Laverstoke Park Farm in Hampshire, because next year it goes to the amazing racecourse of Silverstone. So it's going to be even bigger and better when we return for 2026. But this is the final one you're going to get here in Hampshire today. I know it looks cloudy, but believe you me, it will be, I think, 28 degrees later. It was boiling yesterday, and a really, really great day to just kind of put the shades on and enjoy being followed around by a few wasps.
Well, thank you so much. That's Steve Denyer, a friend of ours on Virgin Radio, who's also one of the presenters, bringing you the brilliant Carfest that raises so much money for so many good causes. I'm delighted now to be joined in the studio by this host supremo, that is Peter Caldwell, who will be taking over from me for the next section.
Can I just pay tribute, first of all, to the neatness that is there? I mean, just if only the viewers and particularly the listeners could see just the very ordered way that Jonathan has left the newspapers in a sort of almost newsagent style fashion, so I can see all the front pages. He's also put all his briefing papers and his running order ready to go to be lifted out of the studio, along with his dirty glass that he's been drinking out of. Jonathan,
am I tidier than Alex, Peter? Is this what you're saying? I'm a bit tidier than Alex, maybe.
I mean, I think most people. I think they're 5-year-olds who are throwing tantrums who are slightly tidier than Alex Phillips. So, Jonathan, I must pay tribute to that.
No, thank you very much. And what are you going to be looking at today, Peter, on your show?
Huge story, of course, from Nigel Farage in regard to what he said about deportations. We'll hear a few clips of what he's been saying to the Times political editor Steve Swinford in just a few minutes' time. We'll also talk to Christine Jardine, a Liberal Democrat MP, about